I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job, Jeannie. And with that, we'll recognize our contest winners.
Good evening. I'm very excited to be here and recognize our Drippy Dropperson contest winners, and I'd like to turn things over to Ms. Vicki Culbreth and thank her for organizing this event once again.
Good evening. So 2015, I think, is our 9th year for the Drippy Dropperson contest. Started off as a coloring book contest for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And last year and this year we decided to make a calendar instead of a coloring book. So this year our theme was the drinking water process. So we asked all of the students to draw a picture of Drippy Dropperson, who's the water utilities mascot, as a part of the drinking water process so we could educate everybody about where our drinking water comes from. So this year we had over 200 entries and we have all 12 winners here today, and I'd like to present them for you. I'd like to ask Charlie Slade and Eco Man from Advanced Disposal to help me out with that.
Hey, Eco Man! Let's have a hand for Eco Man and Advanced Waste Disposal.
All right. Claire Mulkey.
Before we go on, we need to know what Eco Man's superpowers are.
I have many superpowers, Mayor. I have an Ecotron right here, an Eco-Listener, and a couple others that I can't think of. My job is to protect the environment.
All right,
My mother is Mother Nature, and I'm so proud of these kids.
Great. Good job, Eco Man. Proceed.
All right. Claire Mulkey from Mountain Park Elementary School.
Let's have a hand for Claire Mulkey. And Claire is this Claire August?
Claire's has the month of August.
Congratulations.
Jeannie Goldstein from River Eves Elementary School. Kate Ferris from River Eves Elementary School. Colby Chauvin from Queen of Angels Catholic School. Eric Scher from River Eves Elementary School. Omar Mishal from Ilm Academy. Anna Cangelosi from River Eves Elementary School. Annabella Venable from Mountain Park Elementary School. Bella Dishman from the Atlanta Academy. Gabe Nickerson from Northwood Elementary School. Yashad Garud from Fulton Sunshine Elementary School.
Did you get one?
Bella's right here. And Vitha Saram from Fulton Sunshine Elementary School. All right, if we can give a round of applause for our 12 winners.
Council would like a photo op, so if everyone who received a calendar will get in behind the person who gave them the calendar, we'll all have a photo. You didn't get a calendar, Becky Wynn? We'll find you.
Send it down.
Charlie's
Well, Charlie's got my calendar.
You're good.
Missing some people. David, you got a calendar. Hey, love, you got a calendar. You get the picture. If you got a calendar, you get the picture.
I'm at.
You got that. Wait a minute, here's my calendar. Hold up your calendar. All right. What do we need? Is everybody ready? Got their kids' pictures? Let's see what this is still holding a camera. All right, Barry, hold your shirt up in one more picture. All right, one more picture.
We got one more time.
Okay, good job. One more hand for these.
I want to get my picture with Eco Man. That's what I wanted to get my picture with.
Forget all these other.
I know it.
Super.
Eco Man's awesome.
I didn't want to do it because I wasn't sure. Okay with it?
Yeah, we got so excited with the Dropperson, we forgot about it.
As long as we have our priorities straight.
Oh, we have our priorities straight. Fun first. You're not going to pay attention to that anyway.
Next on the agenda is the recognition of the winners of the Ready, Set, Recycle contest for Roswell Schools. Who's presenting that? Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another exciting contest that we had. This is the first annual Ready, Set, Recycle contest, sponsored by Keep Roswell Beautiful. And we had a number of schools participate, most of them elementary and middle schools. And let me read off a list of the participating schools. Swift School, Roswell North, Mountain Park, Queen of Angels, High Meadows, Mimosa, River Eaves, Hillside, Atlanta Academy, Fulton Sunshine, Cottage School, Elkins Point, Northwood, and Elm Academy. And with those schools, they had recycled over 28,000 pounds of material. 324 pounds of plastic and aluminum, 23,678 pounds of paper, and 4,311 pounds of cardboard. So that is an enormous amount of recycling, so we're pretty excited that the boys and girls in our schools and our young people really made a lot of effort, and I understand a lot of the educators and the administrative staff as well chipped in and helped recycle as well. So kept a lot of material out of our landfill, and it's good for Roswell and good for our world as a whole. So, and that was only since January? Yeah, so about three months, a little over 3 months, we were able to recycle over 28,000 pounds of material, so it's pretty impressive. And then, since we had different sized schools, what we did was we broke it down by school and did it on a per capita basis to establish who the winning school was. So that way it didn't matter what size your school was, it was kind of how much you did per person. And we had 2 winners, and originally we started off with 1, but Keep Roswell Beautiful stepped up, and they have given a prize of $250 to each school that they can put toward their recycling, plus the winning teams or winning schools get a trophy. So our winning public school winner this year is Mimosa Elementary. And Mimosa's recycled 7.4 pounds per capita. So that's a lot of recycling. And then our private school winner this year is the Cottage School with 7.2 pounds per capita. I don't know if we have anybody from the Cottage School here.
Melissa's offered to take your check also.
Okay.
Can we get a picture?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Anybody who's here from Melissa?
Okay, here we go. 1, 2. Get another one. Here we go.
One more hand for Melissa.
We also wanted to recognize any other schools that may still be here. I think most of our children have left, but are there any other schools that participated that are represented? All right, if you just, I'm sorry? Hillside, all right. Good job. Thank you all for participating.
Of water, I have a proclamation for Water Appreciation Day. Whereas water is a defining part of our past, present, and future, and whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas our health, comfort, and standard of living depend upon an adequate supply of clean and safe water, and whereas we are all stewards of the water infrastructure upon which our future generations depend, and whereas the citizens of Roswell should have a safe and dependable supply of water both now and in the future, and whereas understanding and awareness of the importance of water resources to our communities are paramount, and whereas Water Appreciation Day is also a day of special recognition for the dedicated water professionals in our city who ensure the safety of our tap water and the protection and proper management of our water resources. And whereas we are calling upon each citizen to help protect our sources of water from pollution, practice water conservation, and recognize the importance of a safe and sustainable water system. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim May 2nd, 2015 as Water Appreciation Day, and ask all the citizens of the City of Roswell to recognize and celebrate this event. And then we'll hear some more of Mr. Skakowski.
I just wanted to recognize a few other water professionals who are here this evening. If you work in the business, would you please stand for just a moment?
Alice. There we go. Thank you for our water.
Thank you very much.
I would toast everybody to water, but y'all don't have water glasses like this, so I'll just pass on a water toast tonight. And finally, it's actually got my last fun thing to do tonight, if I don't count the budget as fun, but Kay loves the budget, but is our proclamation for Roswell Heritage Days in May of 2015. Whereas the month of May is a nationally recognized as Historic Preservation Month, and whereas Bullock Hall will be hosting the Dressed for Drama exhibition with items from two Roswell Historic Society's vintage clothing collections, 2 lectures, and a propagation class. We'll hear more about what propagation class does in a minute. And whereas Barrington Hall will be hosting the North Fulton Drama Club's production of A Twelfth Night, tea with Beatrix Potter, lectures, cooking classes, and garden tours. And where the Smith Plantation will be presenting open hearth cooking demonstrations. And whereas the annual Mother's Day open house will take place at the Southern Trilogy Homes on Sunday, May 10th. And whereas the Cultural Arts Center will be presenting the Roswell Photographic Society's 12th annual Roswell Heritage Juried Photographic Exhibit, dance recitals, Atlanta Wind Symphony Concert, and Roswell Presents Dirty Bourbon River Show. And whereas over 18 other events and activities will be taking place throughout this month, the month of May, including the Riverside Sounds Concert, Alive After 5, events at the Chattahoochee Nature Center, Roswell Remembers Memorial Day service, the GET Golf Tournament, and the Works in Clay Show and Sale. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, Mayor of the City of Roswell, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 as Roswell Heritage Days Month, and call upon all of our citizens to participate in the special observance of Roswell's unique and important heritage and culture. And to tell us more is Mr. Morgan.
All this to celebrate my birthday month. It's amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May is National Historic Preservation Month, and here in Roswell, we're celebrating in a big way. We have a month-long event that will celebrate people, places, and events throughout our city. Now, in the Drippy Drop, they did a calendar, and that was a very creative calendar, so we couldn't be creative, so we just got bigger. So we made a nice big calendar for May, his Heritage Days in May, and we'll give that to the mayor, because I understand you have a hard time reading things sometimes when they're small. So we'll make sure that you get that so you can read that. But throughout the month of May, we have lots of different activities that we invite the citizens to come be a part of. We have 38 different events throughout the month. A lot of them take place on Fridays and Saturdays. But with us today, we have organizations that are helping put these on, because all of these events are happening in May, so we're packaging it as Heritage Days in May. Tonight we have 5 of those organizations that I'll ask these groups to come forward as I call their name. We have the Michael O'Neill Singers, we have the Roswell Photographic Society, we have the Chattahoochee Nature Center, we have the Atlanta Wind Symphony, and we have the Roswell United Methodist Church.
Let's have a hand for all those organizations. Thank you for participating.
First, and we're going to give them just a minute from each of them, and first we'll hear from the Michael O'Neill Singers.
Hello, my name is Cammie Stevens. I'm the chorus manager for the Michael O'Neill Singers, and that again is a group of 160 singers that meet every week in Roswell, just over on Mimosa Boulevard, and we pride ourselves in our choral variety up here. Recently we just did a very serious concert of Rachmaninoff Russian music, but we switched gears from Heritage Days in May. We're putting on a concert entitled Rock, Roll, and Remember, Friday night, May 15th at 8 p.m., and it's a concert saluting the era of American Bandstand, the early years. We're going to have rock and roll musicians, dancers, and music from Elvis, the Everly Brothers, the Bill Haley and his Comets, the Four Seasons. You get the picture. Thanks.
Thank
Roswell.
you. Let's have a hand for the Michael and Neil Singers.
Next, we have the Roswell Photographic Society.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners. We're the Roswell Photographic Society. I'm the president, Gittel Price, and this is the education director, Martina Schmidt. A lot of you know us, some of you don't. We started with about 12 people in a private home, and then we're about over 500 right now, and we meet at the Adult Center on Grimes Bridge. And we have 2 events right now. I think you called both of them off, but we're at the Cultural Arts Center and also at the Colors Festival. So come by. Our events are always free and open to the public. Thank you.
Let's have a hand for the Photographic Society. Thank you.
Next, we have the Chattahoochee Nature Center.
Mayor and Council, we want to invite you to our big fundraiser on May 9th. It's called Rockin' at the River. And of course, anytime you want to take a canoe trip, you know where to come. Rhythms on the River is our new wonderful River Sunday concerts once a month with Tom Ladow. And on May 24th, we have one, and it will be benefiting Star House. So we hope you'll come out for that show. And on Thursday nights, twice a month, not on the same night as the Live After 5, of course, we have Sunset Sips with a little live music and a place to unwind after a long day. But on Mother's Day, this is really special. Mothers are free, so bring your mom out. And the Roswell Arts Alliance is doing some plein air when we're having these too. And on Memorial Day, there's a special river canoe trip, so we want you to come out and visit. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's have a hand for the Chattahoochee Nature Center.
Next, we have the Atlanta Wind Symphony.
Mayor Wood and Council, thank you very much for having us tonight. The Atlanta Wind Symphony is involved with 3 events in May. On May 7th, we'll be having a brass quintet play for the National Day of Prayer right here at the Faces of War Memorial. On May 10th, we do our final concert of the formal season at the Roswell Cultural Arts Center, so the full ensemble will be there. And again, we'll be back on Monday, May 25th for the Roswell Remembers Memorial Day service here at City Hall. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Roswell United Methodist Church, along with the Roswell Recreation and Parks Department, about the Field Day, TR Field Day.
Field Day.
Thank you very much. My name is Woody Markert, and I'm here to invite you all to my very favorite day of the whole year, and that is our 35th Field Day, along with Roswell Parks Department. 35 years of having Field Day for people with special needs. These are adults who range from the age of 84, our oldest one, down to mid-20s. And most of them live at Enable, and Enable is the organization that finds jobs for them, and they have group homes and workshops and whatever. But this day is so important to them. We have so much fun. We start about 9 o'clock in the morning at Grimes Bridge Adult Center, and we have all sorts of games. We have a DJ there that entertains us. These folks just look so forward to it. We start off with the Star Spangled Banner, and we have the Olympic walk around with dog petting, and then our games have gone from obstacle course years ago to more Nerf ball type things now because of their age and their disabilities. But, and the most important part, we have, in our church, we have a Sunday school class named Noah's Ark, and most of them are members of Noah's Ark. And our church stands behind us to no end. We have around 200 volunteers. We have to have a volunteer for each participant, and we have volunteers and their families who man the games, and we have around 25 games spread out on the field. And then the favorite part is one of the Sunday school classes furnishes the varsity hot dog for lunch. So if you would like to have a wonderful morning with us, it's May 16th, always the Saturday after Mother's Day.
If there's a varsity hot dog there, I'll be there.
All right, you got it. You want to say
Let's have a hand for Field Day.
All right,
Thank you.
Thanks to all the organizations that came tonight. The members from the organization have a special gift for the mayor and the council. Since you're going to be on the go during the month of May, they've got you a little satchel that you can pack your lunch, your snack, or your dinner, and go to all these great events throughout the season. So they've got information in there about what is happening in May and all the great events in May.
Well, May is always a beautiful, beautiful weather month for the city of Roswell, and I can see there's something happening every weekend, and there's no reason to leave town this May.
Absolutely.
And there's no reason to sit at home. There's something to do every day.
I encourage every citizen to stay and play in Roswell.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Question.
Councilmember Price.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Morgan, did you by any chance include on that, on May 16th, the Mabry Rock dedication, which is part of our heritage?
No. But on May the 16th, we are dedicating Mabry Rock out at Lita Thompson Memorial Park at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The Mabry family was very instrumental in the settlement of Roswell, and that is where the Mabry family first camped in Roswell. So we're going to be dedicating a plaque to the mayor, to the Mabry family on May 16th, and invite everybody to come.
Thank you.
So, back to, before we continue on with that budget, we have a consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? Any further? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Councilmember Dippolito, Councilmember, that's unanimous. So, Caleb, if you'll present the agenda, not the agenda, the budget.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a presentation of the 2016 budget, so I'd like to call Kevin Klosterbar for a presentation. And while he's making his way, just like to thank staff for your hard work, along with the mayor, to get a proposed budget in front of the council tonight. We will be having meetings to answer your questions about the budget, as well as work sessions as we move through the process. The goal is to have the budget adopted, or some form thereof, by the end of May. Kevin.
Yes, thank you, Kay. So this is the first presentation of the 2016 proposed budget. Council each had a copy of the proposed budget up at your desk. For the citizens, according to our ordinances, there'll be a hard copy available tomorrow morning down at the front desk of City Hall on the first floor. For more in-depth review, we'll also have a hard copy available in the Office of Strategic Planning and Budgeting, also down on the first floor in Suite 130. And there'll be an electronic copy available tomorrow morning on the city's website. For council, you have the proposed budget, and then on the interior cover, you have the PowerPoint if you want to follow along, hard copy. So this presentation is kind of going to be high level. Again, this is a 200-page document, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but it is available both for council review and for public review. So what I am going to do is I'm going to hit some budget highlights. We'll talk about some budget principles, kind of look at a brief 3-year history of where we've gotten to where we are. We'll go through general fund, both the operating budget, talk some on revenues, and talk about maintenance capital for general fund. We'll hit up some highlights for the other funds, and then we'll talk about one-time capital citywide at the end. That's a little bit different from last year. So again, as we're going through general fund, keep in mind that one-time capital will be at the end of the presentation. Then we'll talk about the next steps, some upcoming meetings that we have. So for the budget principles, Roswell has the mayor and council has kept a strong set of budget principles. They're listed there. You know, one of the kind of the underlying principle for every fund is that we start with projecting the revenues for the year, and then we balance the operating expenditures and the maintenance capital within those revenues. That's what we consider a balanced budget. The reserves are only used for one-time capital in the general fund. We maintain a reserve of 3 months of operating expenditures. For the FY16 proposed budget, that number is $14.6 million in the general fund. It's just reserved kind of to cover us for 3 months of operating expenditures. This budget doesn't have any increase in the combined property tax rate. It leaves it at 5.455 mils for the 8th year in a row, and it maintains all current levels of services. So kind of a 4-year look at some operating revenues. Again, these are operating revenues, so we backed out all of our internal fund transfers. So the FY16 proposed operating revenue is $91.2 million. That's an increase of $2.5 million from FY15. Most of that increase is attributed to a projected $1.4 million increase in sales tax revenues. So kind of to highlight a couple of the revenues. Again, this is the millage rate history through 10 years. So as you can see, again, the proposed millage rate, total millage rate is 5.455 mils for the 8th year in a row since fiscal year 2009. This proposed budget does involve a shift of 0.591 mils from debt service to M&O, just because the city paid down some of the debt. But the overall millage rate stays the same, so the citizens' property tax bills will stay the same. Total property tax revenues over 10 years, it's pretty much remaining flat from last year. We did see about a 1% projected increase in the property tax digest for the real property. We're projecting a slight decline in the personal property values. We're projecting a decrease in the motor vehicle taxes as less people are paying that birthday tax, and a corresponding increase in the title ad valorem revenues. So all in all, it nets to pretty much flat, down $100,000 for total property tax revenues.
Just to make a point on that, go back to that previous slide.
Yes, sir.
When it went from 24.4 to 25.6, that was because of the change in the ad valorem motor vehicle millage rate. So that was just a one-time year effective. So effectively, the property tax revenues have remained constant with that exception for the last 4 years.
Yes, sir.
Please proceed. I just wanted to explain people why that little blip was
that's a good
there.
highlight, yes. For sales tax revenues, we're seeing an increase. As I said, sales tax revenue projections are up $1.4 million for FY16. Just as we see increased economic activity in Fulton County, Roswell gets 8.9438% of all the sales tax revenues collected in the county, so we're seeing that number increase by $1.4 million. So kind of look at the operating expenditures and maintenance capital side. The 2016 proposed budget has $113.1 million in operating expenditures and maintenance capital. That's up $5.2 million from the current fiscal year 2015. On the one-time capital side, where it's an increase of $2.3 million, up from $4.2 million in 2015 to a FY 2016 proposed amount of $6.5 million. This is kind of a citywide revenues versus expenditures. It's balanced at $119.4 million for expenditures. Revenues are slightly over it. We're projecting $112.6 million in current revenues, $7.2 million use of reserves citywide across all 27 funds. On the expenditure side, again, $6.5 million in one-time capital, $8.5 million in maintenance capital, and $104.5 million in operating expenditures. The revenue summary, where does the money come from? As I said, sales tax is a big piece of the pie, $23 million. Charges for service externals, $23.8 million. And property tax is $24.1 million. So property tax, charges for external services, and sales tax together make up well over half of the total revenues we're projecting for 2016. Look at the expenditure side. Where's the money going? We have the pie chart broken out by departments. Admin's getting the largest piece at just under $20 million. Police also just under $20 million, slightly less than administration by $60,000. Environmental Public Works at $17.7 million, or 15% of the total expenditure budget. Rec and Parks at $16.4 million. Transportation at $13.5 million. And you can see the rest of them there. So that first pie chart showed where the money's coming from. This is where it's going. On the personnel side, the FY 2016 proposed budget does include an increase of 9 full-time positions. As you can see, the 2015 revised number is 595. 2016 proposed, again, is an increase of 9 FTEs up to 604. These new FTEs I've broken down into 2 categories. You have 6 totally new full-time positions. That includes an addition of 5 sworn police personnel, 4 to be additional police officers in the patrol division, and 1 sworn lieutenant over special investigations. 1 totally new recreation and parks employee as a crew leader for the ARC therapeutic pool to kind of manage the chemicals and kind of oversee the pool. And then you have kind of 3 full-time positions that are converted from existing full-time positions. A lot of these were full-time positions back before 2009 when things turned. They've been transitioned to part-time positions, and it's proposed to bring them back to full-time. This includes 1 in administration, an administrative specialist down at the front desk of City Hall, 1 in the finance department. Again, there's a part-time capital assets analyst that's proposed to go full-time, and 1 in recreation and parks. They have a part-time budget analyst paid for entirely out of the rec participation fund, and this is proposed to bring him up to a full-time position. So that kind of ends the citywide budget highlights. So now we'll go directly down into the general fund, which again, the general fund is the city's largest fund. It accounts for most of the general city services. The general fund revenue history, the 2016 proposed revenues of $65.3 million. That's an increase of $3.7 million over the 2015 revised budget. These increases, most of it's due to the real property tax. As I said, citywide, we're projecting property tax to go up 1%, but because of that shift from the debt millage rate into M&O, the general fund is projected a $2.3 million increase in real property tax revenues and a $1.4 million increase in sales tax revenues. So that makes up that $3.7 million increase to the 2016 proposed revenue budget. On the operating side, the general fund proposed operating budgets for 2016 is $65 million. It's an increase of $3 million over the current fiscal year. As you can see the breakdown, $58.4 million of it is for operating and $6.6 million is for maintenance. Again, it's broken down that way because it aligns with our budget principles that the operating revenues in the general fund are only used for operating expenditures and maintenance capital. The general fund revenue sales tax of $23 million is projected for 2016 and property tax of $22.3 million projected. So those 2 together make up 69% of the total general fund revenue budget. On the other side, looking at the expenditures broken down by department, police department at $17.3 million, recreation and parks at $11.3 million, transportation $11 million, admin at $9.2, fire at $7.9 million, citywide at $5 million, community development at $4.3 million, and finance at $2.6 million. Again, that's the general fund proposed expenditures broken down by department. This next slide just kind of highlights the fact that the general fund is balanced. We started with the projected revenues, and it balances the operating and the maintenance capital budgets within that. So to walk through on the general fund revenue side, we're projecting $65.3 million in current revenues. We are proposing a use of general fund balance in the amount of $3,030,678 for one-time capital. We're proposing to reprogram current completed capital projects in the amount of $213,000, and we're proposed to use the capital projects fund balance in the amount of just under $24,000 for total revenues of $68.592 million. On the expenditure side, you can see it balances to that same exact number. At the proposed base budget of $55.960 million, the proposed program changes of $2.471 million, proposed maintenance capital out of the general fund for $6.588 million, and proposed general fund one-time capital of $3.573 million. General fund new initiatives, again, these program changes total to $2.471 million. We broke this down in the smaller font between discretionary and non-discretionary general fund new initiatives. As we were looking through the budget and developing this proposed budget with the mayor, it became apparent that there are certain things that the costs are just going up on, and we have to do. We label those as non-discretionary, so the total non-discretionary amount is $797,000. 32% of the total general fund program changes we view as non-discretionary, leaving $1.674 million in the discretionary program changes. You can see in the pie chart it's broken down. The pie chart will continue through the next slide as I go through some of the highlights from each department. For the citywide, one of the biggest ones, and it is non-discretionary, is the group benefits increase in the amount of $476,000. This is just because we're projecting group benefits the cost to go up. So the general fund portions is proposed to go up that amount. The 2016 proposed budget does include $545,000 in salary contingency. This is going to be setting this money aside for future implementation of salary studies. The City of Roswell completed recently a public safety salary study. So this will be available for implementation of that and a general government salary study that's currently being developed. The citywide also includes $189,000 of other new initiatives that totals to that $1.2 million amount. In the administration department within the general fund, one of the non-discretionary things is a municipal election, occurs every 2 years. The estimated cost is $230,000, so that's in there. There's $325,000 increase in the citywide IT maintenance adjustment. Most of this, just over $250,000 of it, is for the OSSI software used by the police department. It's a piece of software that the city implemented recently, so that maintenance piece was coming out of the capital project where we had appropriated money to start using the software. Now it's transitioning into the operating budget, so that makes up most of that increase. Legal services are projected to increase. If you remember at the 2015 mid-year budget amendment, we had an increase of $100,000 to get us through the year. Looking forward, we don't expect it to be quite that high, so we propose an increase of $40,000 for legal services. And the administration department includes $12,000 in other new initiatives to total to $607,000. Recreation and Parks Department, the 2016 proposed budget includes $175,000 of funding for the Roswell Arts Commission. This is broken down as $100,000 for a salary and benefits for a new executive director of a nonprofit for the arts, and $75,000 as contingency for community cultural plan implementation. It also includes that converting the part-time budget analyst to the full-time position that I covered in the personnel section, the amount of $43,000, and $15,000 to update the Recreation, Parks, Cultural, and Historic Affairs Department strategic plan. It was last updated, I think the current one runs 2012 to 2016. It's updated every 5 years. So that's proposed in the amount of $15,000. For the police department, their general fund new initiatives are entirely personnel. Again, this budget includes 5 new sworn police personnel. 4 of them are additional police officer positions. The first year funding just proposed for 6 months. So the 2016 budget amount is $133,000. Make note that, again, this is just funding 6 months. So the annual recurring cost will be $266,000. And it includes 1 lieutenant position for special investigations. This is proposed for the full fiscal year for a proposed amount of $85,934. Under transportation, one of the non-discretionary items is increased electricity for streetlights. In the current fiscal year, the City of Roswell added 76 streetlights. A lot of them were for projects such as the River to Square Trail, the westbound through lane, and the Eves Road Complete Street. Those streetlights are already in operation, so we view it as non-discretionary to increase the electricity budget to keep the lights on. The transportation's other general fund new initiatives increase contract service for landscaping in the amount of $16,000. In the finance department, again, this was covered in personnel to convert the part-time capital assets analyst position to full-time, the amount of $40,905. 2 separate online priority-based budgeting tools for $12,500, and to implement monthly billing for utility bills. Utility bills are now billed bi-monthly, and the proposed budget includes making that monthly bills for every customer to increase cash flow and increase collections, the amount of $14,500. For the fire department, includes 2 initiatives. The first is the Community Emergency Response Team program. This will be an educational program available for our citizens to kind of teach them some basic fire and life safety to enable them to be better first responders in the event of an emergency here in the City of Roswell. That general fund new initiative amounts $25,000. And the medical director services we view as non-discretionary. It's an amount of $12,000, and that's required so that the city can provide EMS service. That wraps up that $2.4 million of general fund new initiatives. Moving on to general fund maintenance capital, which again, according to budget principles, also comes out of that general fund operating current revenues. The general fund maintenance capital proposed amount $6.6 million for 2016. It's an increase of, well, it doubles the 2015 amount. We did want to point out that road resurfacing, which in prior years hasn't been funded through maintenance capital, and the 2016 proposed budget comes entirely out of maintenance capital. So that's $1.8 million of that increase. So this is a general fund maintenance capital pie chart by department. Again, $6.588 million in proposed general fund maintenance capital. Again, the pie chart will continue on through the slides as I hit some of the departmental highlights. For citywide, the biggest two expenses in general fund maintenance capital are the citywide facilities maintenance, which is maintaining all the city's buildings at $1.4 million for 2016, and the citywide vehicle replacement program, which is replacing all the city's vehicles according to a clarified replacement schedule of $1.654 million. An additional request for this year is to replace the law enforcement center roof. It is in bad need of replacement, and it was not included in the original FCA plan, an amount of $170,000, to give a total of $3.2 million of general fund maintenance capital for citywide. Transportation has the next highest amount with $2.2 million. Again, here's that road resurfacing and reconstruction that in the 2016 proposed budget is entirely coming out of general fund maintenance capital, coming entirely out of 2016 general fund operating revenues, $1.8 million. It also includes $250,000 for pedestrian mobility and $160,000 in general equipment replacement for the transportation department. The Recreation, Parks, Historic, and Cultural Affairs Department, it once again includes $100,000 in system-wide improvements or park beautification, $36,000 for small equipment replacement program, $28,000 to replace the light poles in the athletic fields, $42,000 for historic homes maintenance, $160,000 to replace a playground at Riverside Park and add a shade structure to the new playground, $150,000 for painting and flooring for the auditorium inside the Cultural Arts Center, and $375,000 for a Recreation and Parks maintenance program. This takes a kind of maintenance program last year that was the Recreation Programs Maintenance Program, and it combines together that with asphalt resurfacing, restriping, some retaining wall repair, and tennis court resurfacing within the city parks. To give Recreation, Parks, Historic, and Cultural Affairs a total of $891,000. The administration department once again includes $68,000 for the ongoing IT equipment replacement program, and it does include $30,000 in additional funding proposed for the phone system replacement. That was a fiscal year 2015 project that was funded the current year in the amount of $107,000. It just came in a little bit over budget as we got bids, so the department requested and the mayor is proposing to fund it additional $30,000 to give administration total $98,000. For the fire department, they're continuing their cardiac monitor replacement program in the amount of $69,557. That is their only general fund maintenance capital. Community Development Department, they're once again doing the aerial photography. This is a cooperative project we do every 3 years, combined with working together with some other North Fulton cities. So the city of Roswell's portion is $35,000 in the proposed 2016 budget. The police department is proposed to replace some tactical vests and helmets within the Special Investigations Raid Unit in the amount of $20,000. And that completes the general fund maintenance capital of $6.5 million proposed for 2016. So moving into some highlights of other funds, this next chart will remain constant as I go through all the funds. So I wanted to take just 1 minute and just talk about the chart so we're all on the same page, we can follow along. This chart on the left-hand side shows 2014 actuals. The green is going to be revenues, the purple expenditures. So it shows 2014 actuals. That was 2 fiscal years ago. It shows the current fiscal year estimated, and then on the right-hand side it shows the 2016 proposed. That black line is the estimated fund balance for that fund. So depending on if revenues were over or under expenditures, the fund balance would increase or decrease. So as you can see, this first one's the E911 fund. The 2016 budget does propose the use of $185,000 of the E911 fund balance, which would bring it down at the end of 2016 estimated to $1.4 million. On the next slide, it kind of just goes through some of the E911 fund new initiatives. They get a portion of that OSSI software I talked about is used by the E911 function, so $47,000 of that increase is here in the E911 fund. They also have $11,850 for a priority dispatch system manual maintenance upgrade, and then $50,000 as salary upgrades for existing incumbent communication officers. For the Hotel Motel Fund, the 2016 budget proposes to use $371,000 of this fund balance. at leaving an estimated $227,000. I do want to point out that most of that remaining fund balance will be reserved for trails. Outside of the trails, it'll just be about $60,000 remaining fund balance in the hotel motel fund. The hotel motel fund, the two biggest expenditures are kind of the city's funding for the Roswell Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Roswell Inc. So the new initiatives are to increase the funding for the Convention and Visitors Bureau by $19,782 and increase funding for Roswell Inc. by $25,000. The Water Sewer Fund, as proposed, it has revenues over expenditures, which would increase the fund balance slightly, just to $400,000. As we talked about in our pro forma, we're still watching this fund closely, but in projecting the revenues, because of that rate increase we had recently that was needed, for 2016 proposed, it is in balance. It has two new initiatives. One of them is interest on the water plant GFO loan in the amount of $85,836 and $20,000 new initiative for ground well exploration. On the maintenance capital side, the 2016 proposed budget does include $142,000 for water line replacement. For the Stormwater Fund, the 2016 budget proposes a use of $636,000 of fund balance, leaving an estimated fund balance of $197,000 above reserved by policy. The Stormwater Fund new initiative involves stormwater design and engineering services. Staff believes that this will kind of increase the design and engineering on the front end, which then will allow the capital it'll basically get some projects ready to hit the to hit the shovel and hit the maintenance capital. And once again, it keeps the maintenance capital stormwater master work order list funding at $1.4 million. For the Solid Waste Fund, the budget proposes a use of $1 million in fund balance. Historically, this fund isn't using all the fund balance we expect it to, but the proposed amount is $1 million, bringing the available fund balance over reserve down to $4.7 million. It has a new initiative, $50,000 for Solid Waste Fund business planning, and it continues the replacement of residential rear loader trucks and commercial front loader trucks in the amounts of $165,000 and $245,000 respectively. In the Rec Participation Fund, the 2016 budget is balanced revenues over expenditures with a slight increase in available fund balance over reserve up to $166,000. We did want to point out that this fund does have some new revenues that we anticipate with the ARC therapeutic pool coming online for 6 months of the year. We are projecting $65,000 in revenues for the pool, and the proposed budget includes $61,826 in expenditures, which gives you a net revenue of just over $3,000. And again, I wanted to point out that we're anticipating the pool to be open for 6 months of 2016. So the staffing is only for 6 months, so the annual recurring cost for a new initiative will be $93,562. For the Fleet Services Fund, the proposed budget has a balanced revenues over expenditures. The fund balance will stay right about $55,000 as it is now. It doesn't have any new initiatives or capital. For the Cemetery Care Fund, we don't anticipate any new revenues coming in for 2016. So once again, we're proposing to spend down all the expenditures, $23,500 out of fund balance. We do want to highlight that this will be the last year this fund can continue as is. We project an estimated $5,500 of fund balance remaining after 2016, so there won't be fund balance available to continue doing the $23,500 on the expenditure side. Most of that expenditure is just for lawn care of the cemetery. For the Lita Thompson Rental Fund, the budget's balanced revenues over expenditures. The fund balance is estimated to be $174,000. The Workers' Compensation Fund, the budget does include proposed use of $98,000 of fund balance. For the Risk Liability Fund, the budget proposes use of $126,000 of fund balance, bringing the available fund balance over reserve down to $1.53 million. And finally, for the Group Benefits Fund, it's balanced revenues equal to expenditures, keeping the available fund balance over about the $1.8 million we held for our maximum claims liability, again, $400,000 above that amount. There is a new initiative proposed out of the Group Benefits Fund, $40,000 for an employee health clinic. As proposed, this will be an employee health clinic that will allow employees to go to this clinic and receive at-cost prescriptions and at-cost care. It's not a separate fund, but we did want to highlight retirement funding. Particularly, we wanted to highlight the defined benefit, their city's pension plan. Each year we get an actuarial report that says what we should contribute. That amount for 2016 is $3,358,593, and that's exactly what we're proposing in the 2016 budget to contribute. Again, that cost is spread across all funds that hold personnel, but we wanted to highlight that we are proposing to meet 100% of that recommended contribution, which will increase the funded percentage for our pension program up to 89.3%. On the defined contribution side, again, that's split between all funds with personnel. The 2016 proposed amount citywide is $857,676 for a total FY16 proposed retirement funding of $4.2 million. And that brings us to citywide one-time capital. So for the pie chart, we see most of the citywide proposed one-time capital is in the transportation department at $3.75 million. Again, the total one-time capital amount, $6.5 million citywide. Transportation makes up 58% of that, and most of that is Sun Valley Phase 1 construction, a total amount of $3.5 million proposed for 2016. It also includes $250,000 for sidewalk connectivity, for a total amount of $3.75 million. In the Community Development Department, it includes $800,000 of funding for east-west alley improvements, specifically Phase 1, Option 2, as was discussed at a Mayor and City Council work session a couple weeks ago. Out of the Police Department, there's a couple one-time capital. First is to continue the TDMA compliant radio project. That is bringing all the radios up to the new compliance to go along with our new radio system. The amount proposed for 2016 is $422,900. There are 5 proposed new vehicles for the police department, corresponding again to that 5 new sworn police personnel that are in the proposed budget. $222,000 for vehicles and radios for the 4 new officers. These will be marked vehicles. And then $50,500 for the Special Investigations Lieutenant vehicle and radio that will be unmarked. It includes $19,385 for intelligence gathering and surveillance equipment, $10,000 to replace the squad room furniture, and $7,400 to upgrade the police bicycle patrol, which would put more of our police officers on bikes to patrol events such as Alive After 5. To put the total police one-time capital citywide amount as $732,000. For the fire department, the budget includes $531,580 in one-time capital. $522,580 of it is to replace all the self-contained breathing apparatus department-wide, and then $9,000 to upgrade the fire station security at Fire Station 1 in the room that we store our medications. Citywide one-time capital, we were proposing $350,000 for 2 emergency generators, one at Roswell Area Park and one at East Roswell Area Park, which would allow the city to have some emergency shelters available in the case of an emergency and the power goes out. And then it includes $175,000 in additional design funding for the City Green project right here behind City Hall. And for Recreation and Parks Department, it continues $25,000 a year program to increase ADA compliance of all city facilities, has $40,000 for outdoor security cameras in the parks, and $75,000 for a new restroom facility at Barrington Hall. In Environmental and Public Works, the proposed budget includes $60,000 for an additional 1-ton dump truck for the city's stormwater division. And then this kind of looks at that same dollar amount, $6.5 million citywide in proposed one-time capital, and it breaks it down by the funding source. So you can see the general fund funding source, the general fund funding amount for one-time capital is $3.3 million. I did want to highlight 2 of these, the reprogramming from current capital projects in the capital projects fund, just to highlight they were proposing to reprogram $213,000 from completed projects, and we're proposing to use $23,787,000 of capital projects fund balance That will leave about $650,000 available in fund balance for appropriating to other one-time capital projects. So that kind of wraps up all the proposals for the 2016 budget. We did want to highlight that one of the things that the budget contains every year is a look at a 5-year capital improvement plan. The 2016 proposed budget, maintenance, and one-time capital make up the first year of that. And just so we can plan moving forward the maintenance and one-time capital needs, it includes fiscal years 2017 all the way through fiscal year 2020. I'm not going to go through all of them in the presentation, but I will highlight that they are available in full detail in the budget book on page 175. You'll kind of find 4 separate tables there. For both maintenance capital and one-time capital, we break it down first by department, as my presentation did, so you can kind of see what departments have projects are coming up, and it also breaks down the same projects into funding streams, so you can kind of see where the funding is proposed and planned to come from. So again, that section starts on page 175 of your budget book. I just took an excerpt of it just so I can describe kind of what the tables look like so that mayor and city council and all the public can easily understand it. So you kind of have the department, the tables are identical. You either have the department or the fund on the far left-hand side. Then the projects will be listed, and then the dollar amounts proposed or planned will be listed there, 2016, 2020. So it'll sum kind of the total 5-year planned amount for that project at the far right-hand side. And kind of the 5-year look, maintenance and one-time capital over the 5 years as planned now includes $182 million worth of maintenance and one-time capital projects. So finally, we want to talk about next steps. Where do we go from here? We are going to have an additional budget work session. That's going to be during the day, Monday, May 4th at 11:30 a.m. Each department is going to kind of come and do a presentation about their proposed new initiatives, proposed maintenance capital, proposed one-time capital. They're going to go over what they've accomplished this year and what they plan to accomplish next year. So again, that'll be Monday, May the 4th at 11:30. And then we'll have a couple budget hearings. Monday, May 11th, I believe that's 2 weeks from tonight, will be the first official reading of the budget as advertised. We'll have the first millage hearing, and that's when we would really like council's add and deletes by or at that night. And then Monday, May the 18th at 6:30, you'll have a special called millage rate hearing. And then Wednesday, May 27th at 7 p.m., that'll be our second reading of the budget, an additional millage hearing. And as Kay mentioned before I started this long presentation, we hope that the budget in some form or another is adopted on that night. That's our plan.
All right, so to summarize it, staff's tagline was finish what we started. The mayor's tagline is steady improvement. And just a solid, steady, continuing to improve. We're not making, borrowing money to make giant commitments, but we are making steady improvements. Going from adding police officers to looking at our pay scales and how they adjust, and $6 million in capital improvements. I'm not asking council for questions at this time because that's a lot to absorb, and I think I'd like you to study this and how each request impacts other requests, because this budget is balanced, and what we wish to add we're going to have to subtract from someplace else. So try to consider what your adds and deletes are. When you come forward with a delete, I think it's easy. When you come forward with an add, we're going to ask you where the delete matches that, because we do need to balance this budget. But does council have any questions in general about the process? I know we've got a lot of specific questions which we don't have time tonight to cover. We want to start with the individual sessions and then work sessions. But any questions about the process or any general comments from council? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Yes, the department presentations being at 11:30, usually we do that over a period of multiple work sessions. Are we going to be able to accomplish that in a reasonable period of time, or do we need to plan on spending the afternoon here? Ms. Love?
Typically, we do all the department presentations. Well, we've done it a variety of ways. I believe, what do we have, an hour and a half
Yes,
for this? An hour and a half. They will have about 10 minutes, which will leave you about 10 minutes at the end if we're gonna stick to the hour and a half. And the idea was to get out from the departments, their opportunity to talk about the new initiatives, what they've accomplished, and then we can take questions, and if we have the information, we can give it. If there's things that we need to provide, then that would be at that next work session.
So the idea is for it to be a brief presentation, and then probably a lot of the Q&A will have to be additional information provided later.
Correct, and in the years past, when we've had the questions, we send out a Q&A document. We'll pose the question and then give you the answer, and we send it out in advance so that as we collect those, so anything we collect that day, that's been our plan. And we can adjust that to however the council would like or feels that the discussion would be best.
I would encourage specific questions about the budget to Kay and the budget team in advance of these meetings. If you, in overlooking this, you've got specific questions, the sort of general positions is more what I'd like to hear at this. If you don't like the answer, you can perhaps then take a position, but try to get the answers, to specific questions, because there is a lot of ground to cover, and the more that you can cover, just getting specific answers to the private sessions, and then adds and deletes and positions and matters to be debated by council at the general sessions.
I did have one general comment, and I'm really glad to see that our road replacement has finally made it 100% into our maintenance program. I think that's a good move.
Any other general comments or questions from council? Let's have a hand for the budget department. They worked hard on this. Thank you. This is a very tough subject to cover, and I think you did a good job.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Which brings us to the Admin Finance Department, the Fund Department, Councilman Ken Eigelhart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item is a budget amendment to this year's budget to fund a general government compensation study in the amount of $40,000, and Mr. Harner will make a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is for approval of a budget amendment to the current fiscal year so that we can begin to engage consulting on a general government compensation study. As you know, this past fall, we did the compensation study for public safety, and we're currently putting together recommendations to present to you on those items. But we also, just as importantly, need to ensure that we, in the city of Roswell, remain competitive in attracting and retaining talent in the other areas. So that's the purpose behind this item.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilman Eigelhart to approve the study. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DePolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion? Councilmember Price.
What was the concern that we had that led to this?
Well, we did a reclassification study in the police department because the competitiveness in comparison to other cities, things had gotten out of whack. For example, to be competitive in hiring some police officers, we were having to pay more than our current pay range. And so it would pay some officers to resign and then reapply to the city government, and they'd get a raise to be competitive. Well, that same dislocation over time occurs in every department. Well, and so to go back and look at our rates and how they compare to other cities and are we competitive, we need to look at not just the police department, but to look at all of our departments. And the idea is all our departments deserve the same attention.
However, my question was, we had a demonstrated concern in the police department, which we don't have elsewhere, so I don't see.
Well, if you feel there is no concern and there's no need anywhere else to look, that would be a position. I believe there is a concern, and we need to look at all of the departments because all of them are suffering from the same change over time in competitive pay scales. Caleb.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Price, it has been the city's practice at least every 3 to 5 years to do a pay plan analysis or a compensation study to make sure that, one, we remain competitive, but two, even within certain bands and as the market changes, we want to make sure that we are have competitive pay rates and that the pay range is maintained not just by providing pay increases for staff over time, but the actual range. And sometimes there will be a particular band. Like the last time that we did it, we concentrated on the technology bands of staffing, our classes of jobs. So we take a look at it, we look at job descriptions over time. As we have reorganized, job descriptions have changed, and we have put duties in one job, taken them away from another, so it's a way for us to calibrate that and make sure in totality across every job class in the city that we are equitable related to the pay grade it's assigned and the pay ranges that are assigned to that grade. So we always have an opportunity to take a look at that, and we don't do it obviously every year, but within every 3 to 5 years, that is a best practice, and that is something that the city has done at least over the last decade since I've been around. It could have been done much longer than that.
I would just say that I think we have evidence in inability to hire people or people leaving and job vacancies. We have a lot of indicators that we're having a problem, and lack of having any of those. I don't know why we're going looking for trouble and wasting money in the process. That's just my opinion.
Any other questions?
And you can roll your eyes at me, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Does the council have any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilman Eichelhart to approve. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Yes, come forward, please. If you'll give us your name and address.
Janet Russell, 260 Willow Springs Drive. Just a quick comment. I think everybody that I know knows that the City of Roswell's employees are grossly underpaid. They're not competitive. Our police officers are pitifully paid. And as Chief Ricky Spencer brought up about 2 months ago, our firefighters make $14.80 an hour, and we keep them on part-time status so they don't get any benefits. This is an embarrassment to a city with a budget that this has got. I personally am embarrassed. I love living here, but I'm embarrassed to think that the majority, if you probably did a quick poll, how many employees in the city actually live in the city, you're going to find out that 90% of them, except for top management like Ms. Love and others who are well paid, they can't afford to live here. And you know, and I know, that when you have employees who live within the city that they work, you have a stronger fiber of a community. So I think you need to go ahead and give all these people a raise. I know some employees in this city have been here over 20 years and haven't had a raise in 8 years. Nothing. Nothing. Shame on the city. Give these employees a raise, for God's sake.
Does anyone else wish to comment? Mr. Davidson said we already had a motion and a second. So we don't need a second.
We're good on this.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's Councilman Orleans, Councilman Eichelhart, Councilman Wynn, DiPolito, and Diamond. All opposed? Councilman Price.
No, I was with the other. Well, I did have a question.
If you wish to comment, you can. So would you like to vote and then comment, or comment and then vote?
Well, I had my hand up before you called for the vote, so either way, you choose.
Well, I'm giving you the choice to you can either vote and make a comment, or comment and make a vote. I'm giving you that choice.
If you have called for the vote and the vote is nearly over, I have voted in the affirmative. If you'd like a comment, I'll give you a comment.
I'm not looking for a comment. I'm giving you the choice if you wish to make a comment. So the vote is unanimous in support of the $40,000 study. Councilmember Price, if you wish to say anything further, you may.
My point is, I don't know how much of a study that we need if we determined that raises are in order. I mean, I'm happy to see that. I mean, we can figure out where the discrepancies are without expending $40,000 for a study. That's my point.
Point noted. Next item, Councilman Eichelhart.
Thank you. The next item is the approval for the mayor or city administrator to sign a contract with Water Tower Partners for a corporate sponsorship pilot program in the amount of $45,000, and a budget amendment for that, presented by Ms. Love.
Thank you. As you recall, the city contracted with Water Tower Partners to do some research analysis, asset evaluation, and a preliminary list of target categories that we might seek to get some sponsorships from and partnerships. Those were identified, and we've had a number of discussions, and what bubbled up through most of the research and analysis were recreation-related types of assets that the city had as prime candidates to seek partnerships. So the Rec Commission took a look at it, and they had some thoughts about which might be priority items to target. And Kevin Bryant with Water Tower Partners is here tonight in case you have some questions for him that are not staff related. This contract would last approximately 9 months. The estimated time would be about 20 hours a month, and it would be spent actually asset organization, actually packaging the assets to take to market, meeting with potential sponsors and sponsorships, and then bringing deals back to the council for consideration. And there is a flat amount of the $45,000, and in the proposal there's also a proposal for 15% of any deals that are actually entered into for sponsorship or partnerships. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Orleans. Questions? Councilmember Price.
Yeah, is 15% a standard percentage for this sort of proposal gathering?
That is what we are told by Water Tower Partners. Obviously, staff does not have that experience, but that is what we are told. And Mr. Bryant reported when we took this to committee that actually this is a lesser percentage than other retail type or private sector deals would be. In the government arena, it is a lesser percentage according to what his experience is.
I think, as I recall from the committee, that was the hourly rate was what was discussed, not the commission was not discussed at all.
Yes, ma'am, actually it was in the proposal. We didn't spend any great length of time, but it was a part of the proposal and noted in the committee meeting. We did not spend an amount of time talking about the actual percentage per se, more so on the mechanics of how this might work. But it was part of their original proposal to us.
And our deliverables, I mean, we don't have any base requirement for what has to be?
We don't have a base requirement other than the assets that had already been identified by them in the preliminary analysis, as well as the feedback from the Rec Commission and feedback from Mayor and Council in previous work sessions. The idea would be for he and his team at Water Tower Partners to develop a strategy and a package per se to take and market to different brands that would be primary candidates. Not a lot of them. We've talked about having fewer, more robust partners as opposed to having many partners. So it will be whatever the market will bear and whatever partnerships will come about based on these conversations and the interest that people may have in partnering with Roswell. But those would be brought back to you. There would be no deals brokered with any finality to them without them coming back to you for your approval.
And just one other question. If say, Roswell Inc. also has a similar opportunity to secure something, or even within the department, Recreation Department, we've discussed this at length at the Recreation Commission, are we allowed to sort of independently secure those, or do they have an exclusive on these opportunities?
No, ma'am, they don't have an exclusive. We have actually talked with Mr. Bryant about that. He has been in conversation with Roswell Inc. The idea would not be to duplicate those relationships or partnerships. Those are some that have already started and are worked very nicely for the city of Roswell. There also are some opportunities to enhance existing partnerships. Those would not be the ones that he would be targeting.
So we wouldn't have necessarily any turf battles as to whether or not they get credit for something that we do?
No, ma'am, we will give credit where credit is due. Everybody will be sharing in that. I don't expect any turf battles.
Well, or just inability to identify who actually secured the.
Oh, no, ma'am, we will know who secured the deal.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Did we get a motion on that? Pretty sure. We have a motion and a second. Does anyone in the audience have any questions? Just come forward, please.
There was an accident out here, so I had to come by. Didn't know there was a meeting. I'm a little confused in this water tower thing because I could be winning double bingo right now. Right, Jerry? Yeah. Exactly. It's blackout. You're going to, sorry, but you're going to employ somebody, Miss Love, who's going to work 20 hours a month for 9 months. So that's 180 hours, and they're going to make $45,000 to do 180 hours of work. I'm in the wrong business. Plus 15%. Are we really talking about advertisements on water towers? Because what's the difference between that and a billboard?
Water tower is a company name. It is not a product.
Okay, good.
So they're not building
thank
water
you for
towers.
clarifying. No, we have water towers. Where are these going to go?
Please, if you'll allow me to try to
Well,
answer
usually
your
you
question.
tell me to talk to her. Since she gave the presentation, Mayor Wood, you usually refer me to the person that made the presentation. I just want to know where are these, is this going to be advertisements all over public city property?
It is, we're getting into partnerships with private industry to promote Roswell. One example of what might be done would be shades in recreation, sunshades in recreation department that might have logos on them. Well, maybe not logos on them, but they're not looking, they haven't come forward with a specific project as much as partners. So it might be a partner that might be involved with the Roswell Criterium next year.
No.
It might be, they have not limited the product as much as trying to find partnerships with private industry to promote through city projects what they're doing.
So
it hasn't been defined to the point this council is going to be looking at these things. Their presentation is, we're not looking for an ad on a banner in the back of the ball field as much as a co-promotion.
Okay, well, the reason I'm very curious because I think we're all a little tired of there being an advertisement, and I have never met a private company that didn't sponsor something that didn't want their name everywhere. It's just another form of a billboard. And I know that at the Roswell Pool a couple summers ago appeared on the fences advertisements for companies on the fence around the pool. Personally, I don't really want to go to a pool and see advertisements for other things. I go to the pool that's owned by the people, which is paid for by the people, and I don't want to be slammed with more and more advertisements. Why don't we just are we going to sell the name of the city pretty soon, and it'll be the Roswell, City of Roswell, sponsored by blankety blank? Because that's what it's coming down to. And I've been in private business 35 years, I have never met a private company that out of their largesse has decided that they will provide anything without plastering their name and their product all over you, everywhere you go. And to me, that diminishes the value of this city if it says basically, we're up for sale. We don't like those billboards that are on 9, that's for sure. This will be no different except that they will be more subtle and in our face everywhere we go. 15% plus what they sell. It came to like $380 an hour. $45,000 for 180 hours of work. As a taxpayer, I have to tell you, I think that's incredibly wrong. I didn't really come here tonight to talk about this stuff, but I'm just astonished the way you're spending money on selling us. You can call it private partnerships, you can call it sponsorships. It's called a billboard, it's called selling. And people are really tired of being sold every single time they turn around. They're just tired of it. Pretty soon we'll have the Faces of War Memorial by Nally. I mean, that's what it comes down to, and people are sick of it. They're sick of it. The city green, The city green, sponsored by Monsanto. There's an idea. So I'm sorry, but as a taxpayer, and again, I'm the messenger, when I go tell people what you're doing, they're going to say, what in the world are they thinking? What in the world are they thinking? I said, the city's for sale. Just sell the whole spirit of the city and the heart and soul. The bottom line, everybody keeps saying, I listen for the cash register.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? The council will be making final approval on any proposals made, and I'm confident this council will not be approving any billboards, particularly given Councilman Eaglehart's history. And I'm sure that whatever done will be tasteful and beneficial both to the citizens and to our partners that we select. Any further comments from council before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is the approval to amend the Code of Ordinances, sections 22.7.1 through 22.7.12, to allow personal transportation vehicles, PTVs, also known as golf carts with certain requirements to regular people, to operate on city streets designated with a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. This will be the first reading, and before Ms. Love goes into detail, we've had some discussions throughout the day as to what could be done with this, whether we should have a 5-year window for some permits, whether there should be no permits. So if this should pass, I would suggest that we take this one more time. We may not decide to do that ultimately, but talk about it one time in between now and the next reading at the committee, to think about those things and not necessarily resolve them tonight. But this is our first reading.
Mr. Davidson, if you'd read the ordinance, please.
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Article 22.7, to delete the existing Article 22.7 golf carts and substitute a new Article 22.7 to allow operation of personal transportation vehicles, motorized carts, as defined by OCGA Section 40-1-1, 43.1, upon the public roads of the City of Roswell having a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less, and to allow the use of personal transportation vehicles, motorized carts, as defined by OCGA 40-1-1, upon designated multi-use paths and for other purposes. Now therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the mayor and council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment to the ordinance regarding regulation of personal transportation vehicles. Article 22.7 of the Code of Ordinances is hereby deleted in its entirety, and the following is substituted as a new Article 22.7, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the first reading.
This first reading provides for several things. As you recall, back in December when you adopted the first ordinance to implement PTVs on public streets of 25 miles per hour or less, it had a March 1 effective date. So the last action that you took was to delay that to July 1, 2015 to allow us opportunity to put in place the provisions. One of the provisions is to charge for the registration of $15 a year to register PTVs. There's a variety of forms that staff has created, taken from other cities who currently allow PTVs on their streets. And Mr. Asenbrack is here, and he can speak to the signage that will be required and where staff proposes placing the signage based on the requirements of the state law, and the state law is strict regarding where they're placed and the wording. I know there's been some discussions about the requirement for registration as well as how often the registration is. So staff is prepared to address those questions. This first initial reading is bringing it just like it was intended back in December related to the annual registration, the $15 being the maximum amount that can be charged, and the forms. There's a form for residential registration, there's a form for business registration, a form of a change of address, and a form of ownership change. That's the minimum. One of the important things to note on the forms that you would be approving along with this, if it is approved ultimately, would be there's an affidavit, and when that is signed by the golf cart owner or motorized vehicle owner, they're acknowledging that, one, that they've read it, that they understand that they have to abide by the rules such as providing insurance. No one under the age of 16 can operate it, that it has to meet certain requirements. The motorized vehicle has to meet certain requirements. So they're acknowledging and attesting that they have read that and will abide by that. The sticker is important for enforcement so that the police department, and just by observation, can see if a motorized cart has a sticker on it or not. Related to how often you want to do that, if you want to charge that, staff understands that that is under further consideration. I will let Mr. Asenbrack talk about the map.
Thank you, Kay. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. We have a map. It highlights all the roads in the city of Roswell that are 25 miles an hour or less. It is currently live on the website so people can see it, and we're generating some conversation based on that. State law requires us to put signs at the entrances to the city on the state routes that show that alert incoming motorists that they will be seeing personal transportation vehicles on local roads. And we have built those signs, and they're probably going to go up around middle of June at the 9 locations. And we are also experimenting with some other elements to capture. People are already sending us questions about crossings and things like that. So we're exploring different avenues to capture that data and bring that forward to you as well.
Does the council have any questions for staff? Councilmember Price.
The Georgia state law allows for what fee per what time period?
It allows for a maximum of $15 per year.
Okay, and some cities actually charge by a larger, greater interval?
No, ma'am. The only anomaly to that I'm aware of is Peachtree City, who was grandfathered in, and they have a larger registration fee for people who are not residents, who are going to bring a cart into the city. Mr. Davidson, please correct me if I'm misspeaking.
No, that's correct. It's $15 at least every 5 years. So you can do it annually, or you just have to do it at least every 5 years.
Okay, so it's still at $15 a year, it's just that they don't collect it except every 5 years?
I'm not aware of how anybody does it other than Peachtree City, and they collect it annually.
Is there any other city that we're aware of that does it?
I think they're legal in Tybee Island, but Tybee's kind of eccentric. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm the one that kind of stirred the pot on the registration. In December, as you all know, I was quite ill, so I missed some council meetings and some committee meetings. So, but I did talk to Councilmember Eichelhart about this. I think it's great that what we're doing, so I'm not arguing against the ordinance. What I want to look at is the registration, because state law says may. Local municipalities may charge, may register. I can understand the registration, but instead of going into a lot of detail, as Councilmember Eichelhart suggested, is it possible to go ahead and just do the first reading, vote on that, but bring the registration part to committee on Wednesday morning so we don't take up a lot of time tonight to discuss it? And that way we can staff maybe can get some more information for us, for Wednesday morning. But again, I'm not against the ordinance. I think it's great what we're doing. I'm just having some citizens saying that they don't mind paying the $15, but they think paying it annually, maybe we can work something out, but I think that's a discussion for committee. If
the answer is yes, and it can be approved tonight and amended to change the registration requirements in the second reading.
I'd like to bring it to committee on Wednesday morning so we don't waste a lot of time tonight. If that's but it's up to Councilmember Eichelhart, since it's his department, administration, finance.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. With respect to renewals, I know we're a long way off from renewals because we have to register for the first time. But is that something that can be done online or mail-in? Do we
Both. We anticipate both. That'll be processed, should this be implemented, and a fee charge that'll be processed through finance, who already processes a lot of payments and bills. So just like a car decal, when people renew online, we expect it to operate much the same way. We really don't have an idea about how many there may be out there to be registered. We don't have a good feel for it, so we'll adjust our process. But both a manual system and an automated system will be made available.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Diamond.
Thank you, sir. I do like the idea of making it less often at a minimum. Would that be something that somebody would like to recommend for first reading, and then we can discuss it at committee, or?
You can propose an amendment to the first reading if you wish.
I'll do that in a second. But
Okay.
I guess one of the questions in doing that, would we look at $75 as 5 times 15, or that's
You
the
can't
thing?
charge 75.
I thought it was on per year basis.
No, it's $15 at least every 5 years.
Okay.
So you could charge 15 a year, or 15 every 5 years, or 15 every 2 years.
Okay. Well,
20 every 2 years.
15 is the max.
No, 20 every 2 years is 10 a year.
Mr. Davidson, can you clarify the debate over here?
It'd be $15 max whenever you do it. So you can charge 15 every year, you can charge 15 every 2 years,
But I think
10 every year.
I think the key thing is to not create this monster that we have to do all the time. So, and one of the questions was, is 15 going to cover the expense? And I don't think it is, so I guess
It
we're going to
doesn't
eat it either
now.
way.
And I think that was staff's thought in learning about how the law read, and when staff had our organizational meetings, we talked about it. And so our policy, based on what we typically try to do, is to recoup costs, to cover them. So when we offer these types of permitting and fees and all of that, that's where it came from. It can be whatever the council deems appropriate, and we will implement that, but it will in no way cover the cost.
But doing it every year and still only
No,
charging
sir.
15 is going to make us
Correct.
deeper in the hole.
Correct.
So then I would amend it then to make the amount.
You haven't made the motion yet, I don't think.
Well, whenever I make the motion, are we ready
I
to
want
make
to
a
get, I
motion?
want to get comments from council before you make the motion.
All right.
Any other comments or questions from council before Councilmember Eichelhardt makes his motion? Councilmember Price.
Is this the place to do any penalties, or be, what?
We have an ordinance which has been read. I'm waiting breathlessly for Councilmember's motion, but if you'd like to amend his motion,
Well, I'm just
you can
asking,
propose an
is it
amendment.
necessary that we put penalties in here, or is that just up to the judge?
No, we wouldn't put penalties in our ordinance. It would be, should there be a violation, then that would be adjudicated through our court system.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Orleans, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to say, let's get to the motion.
Councilmember Eichelhardt.
I move to approve the first reading with the change to section 22.7.12 that deals with annual registration. I'm not going to rewrite the words now, but I would like to direct staff to correct the wording so that it's $15 for a 5-year registration, and we'll work on that.
I assume that would be for the life. If it's transferred, it would then have to be re-registered under the new transferee, because we're trying to track who owns it.
Correct. So I'll let, again, staff work out those details.
We have a motion by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Just come forward, please, if you'll give us your name and address. Caleb, if you'll join us up here, I need somebody to time.
Yes, sir. Just a quick question. When you read the this proposal, did you say that these could be used on multimodal paths? But it was in the amendment. I mean, in the proposal, somebody said the words, "These can be used on multimodal paths." And if that is the case, that means someone could take one who lives in Arium, go across Riverside, Azalea Drive, and ride it on the multimodal path that runs along the river where children roller skate and ride their bicycles. I just want to clarify it, because someone said multimodal path and my ear perked up.
I am certain that there has been lots of discussion and lots of things said, but let's turn to Mr. Davidson, who helped draft this ordinance, for his interpretation of where these can be used.
What the ordinance says is it may be allowed on the multi-use pass if approved by mayor and councils by resolution. So that would have to come back to mayor and council. They would have to approve it by resolution, and then that path whatever that section is, could be approved.
Okay, because as the person who's never going to own a golf cart, but those people that do, if the word gets out, this is just the human nature factor, if it gets out that they are thinking about using them on multimodal paths, they will preempt you and go use them anyway without your permission. Just so you know that. So if they even, people think that it's in the wind, they're going to go ahead and do it because in this city it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So they'll just go ahead and do it, which means children or older adults or families who walk that Azalea Drive path, it's 10 miles, because I've done it, over and back and all the way into the landing and back, someone will be injured from that. So I'm just, as the caution pedestrian person, I'm just telling you, somebody's going to take advantage, bring the golf cart out of those condominiums, Riverwalk or whatever, go right across Azalea Drive, enter and drive up and down on that river path unless you make it quite specific from the beginning that there are no ATVs or PTVs, whatever kind of V you want to call it, allowed on that path. You can't hardly move on that path on the weekends now. It's so jammed. I would hate to see someone get injured. You know, it's just, as a user, I'm just coming to you. You don't live in this area. None of you do. I do. You don't understand the use and the mentality of the people.
Does anyone else wish to comment? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? Councilmember Price.
Yes, in the marked up version, and I guess that's the same as the final version, but it does say in 22.7.6, it says, it does say, or on multi-use paths as designated by mayor and council by resolution. Yet, further down in that paragraph, it says, except as noted above, they may not be operated on. It would make more sense to have all the places they're not to be operated on enumerated in that, or listed in that sentence. And then, as the other sentence suggests, that by resolution, that list can be modified, as opposed to saying, I would amend the motion to strike everything following 25 miles per hour or less, period. And then go further and say, mayor and council may amend by adding or subtracting, and then add the words multi-use paths in the final sentence following sidewalks.
There is a motion by Councilmember Price. If it is not accepted, there's still the option for Councilmember Price to discuss with Councilmember Eichelhart to try to work out that language. But is there a second to Councilmember Price's motion tonight? Fails for lack of a second. Councilmember Price, that doesn't mean that you can't get with Councilmember Eichelhart and perhaps clear up any confusion.
Yeah.
Further discussion.
Wasn't that hard, but that's all right.
Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. First reading. Councilmember Orleans. Well, that's Councilmember Diamond, DePolito, Wynn, Eichelhart, Price, and Orleans. That passes unanimously.
Make a comment.
Yes, Councilmember Price.
I voted to move it forward to the second reading, but I do believe that 22.7.6 needs some revision to put multi-use paths in the sentence of where they may not be operated.
I'm confident the record will include your comments. Councilmember Eichelhart.
Thank you. The next item is approval for mayor, city administrator to sign a contract with Trident Insurance for property and casualty insurance, not to exceed $751,700 and $8,500 for national flood insurance program coverage. Mr. Davidson.
Thank you. We put out to bid, our broker did, for renewal of the property casualty insurance. We received 3 bids ranging from $751,700 to $920,000. Our recommendation is to go with the Trident Insurance Services, who was the lowest, most responsible bidder, and they are our current insurer at this time. We recommend staying with them. Also, we recommend $8,500 to American Bankers Insurance Company for national flood insurance.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Well, we're going to wait for Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Councilman, you know, it threw me off because he read it, so I was thinking of the attorney,
We
sorry.
were talking about something else, so you were helping, but I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Eichelhardt. I'm going to recognize a second by Councilmember Wynn. Any further does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Then the final item for this section anyway is approval of the T-Mobile South LLC Water Tower lease amendments with David again.
Thank you. This item is actually 2 amendments.
This is not the water tower group that is promoting branding and marketing. This is a different water tower.
This is actually T-Mobile, who has antennas on 2 of our water tanks. They have come forward with proposals for two new arrays, modern arrays to put on the towers. The proposals have been reviewed by our water department. They have agreed to increase the rent on each one by $500 per month. We recommend moving forward with the amended leases.
Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Eichelhardt to approve the leases. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Orleans. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll turn to liaison to the Community Development Department, Councilmember Becky Wynn.
I'll let Councilmember Eichelhardt do the motion on this one. This is an approval of an amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances, Section 22.4.1 regarding on-street parking, and this will be the second reading. Ms. Wakefield.
Thank you. Yes, this is the second reading of an amendment to the city's Code of Ordinances to increase the allowable parking hours from 10 to 24 hours. At the last council meeting for the first reading, staff was asked to go back and investigate the possibility of a permit decal program. Staff, I did the research in looking at other cities, and there are many cities that have a decal program. There are at least 3 in Georgia, Athens, the city of Atlanta, and Savannah. And this type of program is more geared toward more urbanized areas where you have a lot of in-town residential development, where you have residents that have moved in where there's no parking allowed. And this is a way to provide for parking for those residents. They also compete with metered parking, given that with the exception of probably Ken Street in the city of Roswell, all developments, especially new developments, have to provide parking as required by the UDC. Also, there was concern raised with such a program related to not so much the enforcement, but mainly the resources that it would take to implement such a program.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not necessarily questions. Well, I guess they are. I'll pose my comments in the form of questions. Most of the comments I've heard over the years from people who have concerned about cars parking in the streets are not necessarily about the amount of time the cars are there, except for if the cars are there on an ongoing basis. You know, if they're there for a short period of, you know, if there's a visitor, it's usually not a big deal. But when somebody constantly parks in the street, it gets to be a little bit of a problem, particularly if there's sight lines and things like that. I mean, I guess there's really no way to keep this from being somebody's permanent parking place I mean, how do we avoid that kind of a scenario?
Well, sir, they still would be restricted by the 24 hours. And if we get a complaint that someone is parking there continuously, then we would take the same tactic that we take with the 10 hours. We go out, we mark the tires, we monitor it, and we go back and we check. In terms of being parked too close to the intersection where there might be a sight distance problem, we would work with the transportation department to address that issue.
And that kind of brings up my second comment, and really a lot of the comments I've heard in the past are issues with people parking either directly across from a driveway, so it makes it challenging for somebody to pull out. It may not impede access, but there's always a concern pulling out of the driveway that you might back into someone's car that's in the street. And even more significant than that is situations where they are close to an intersection, or they're in a curve where it's hard to see, or they're at a hill where you're coming over the hill and all of a sudden there's a car parked there. I just want to make sure that in those scenarios where we're having potential issues, where if you're driving down the street you can get by, so there is safe travel, but there's still, it's kind of a judgment call, but there are some issues with potential problems with the car being in the street. Do we have enough teeth in this new wording to make sure that code enforcement has the discretion to ask somebody to move the car? And it could be, you can park it on this stretch of road, but you need to move it 20 feet over.
Councilman Igar, I think you've gotten perhaps code enforcement as opposed to traffic safety. So if someone Chief, can you come up and tell us, there's a separate ordinance that has to do with obstructing the right-of-way and creating a safety hazard, which really is not related to this ordinance. It's a different group enforces it, and that's called our police.
Correct. There are state laws that prohibit you from parking behind a driveway, parking with, I believe, 100 feet of a crosswalk, of a stop sign. So there are state laws in place that prohibit people from parking in those locations. And this really deals with someone parking, for example, in front of their house. As you know, right now it's 10 hours, and it would be changed to 24 hours.
Well, I thought that in the past people were calling code enforcement, and maybe they were, maybe that was part of the problem.
Well, they may call code enforcement, but usually police are the ones that handle the parking issues.
All right, so if someone suspects that a car is parked just in an area that creates a safety condition, they would call the police department and ask for somebody to come out and...
Well, it wouldn't have to be a safety condition. Usually the calls that we get now relating to parking are two neighbors that have some dispute, and they use parking as an issue to get back at another neighbor. It's not really a safety issue. If you park on the street for 10 hours or longer, that's illegal.
Right, and I'm not talking about those cases, because I know there's a number of those that go on, but there are instances where somebody parks, like I said, directly across from a driveway, making it difficult for cars to get out, or I've had several situations where somebody was parked just over the top of a hill. So if you came driving, you came over the top of the hill, all of a sudden there was a car there and you had to swerve. And there have been near misses as a result of those situations.
And there are state laws that make that illegal, both of those situations.
All right, so once again, that would be in the purview of the police department, not code enforcement. Correct. So if we hear those complaints, we refer them to you.
Correct.
Or your department.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Article 22.4, Motor Vehicles, Operations and Maintenance of the Roswell Code of Ordinances. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Section 22.4.1 is deleted in its entirety and substituted therefore with a new subsection 22.4.1, which read as included herein, and if approved, this will be the second reading of the ordinance.
Councilmember Aguilar, did you have a question?
Comment more than question, so I'll wait for the motion.
Do we have a motion?
Okay. Yes, sir. I'm seeing Councilmember Hypelhart was going to jump in. I'm sorry. Motion to approve second reading.
Motion by Councilmember Wynn to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Councilmember Eichelhardt, I'll recognize you.
Thank you. I had asked about the permits, and I also had looked some as well, and I guess I didn't mean for it to be a citywide thing, because most of them are, where it's a designated area, and then you can park or not based on the permit. I understand that. And I guess I hadn't intended for that to be something we looked at, but more on a small case basis where one of the things that's been brought up is an individual home needed to park on the street more often than what we're allowed in those specific cases to allow that. And under what those circumstances are, I don't have the exact, how you would determine those. But I agree, I don't want to do something that is, all over, everybody has to do permits all the time. But my concern is when it's hard enough now to enforce, and frankly, we all agree that, how do you actually do that with a 10-hour window? But I think when you move to 24-hour, you effectively eliminate any chance of really having any kind of enforcement, because it's hard enough to mark 10 hours. When you do 24, I just don't think it's going to happen. So I think we're again creating a bigger problem than we're solving, and we'll come back and look at this again at some point soon based on that.
Yes, sir.
Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Yes, come forward, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight.
If you'll give us your name and address.
My name is David Keating. I live at 89 Nancy Trail, about 2/10 of a mile off of Canton Street. And I first had a question just to make sure I understand the purpose behind the proposed change in the law. What is the objective? What are we trying to solve?
Well, we have a law that says that you cannot park a car on the street for more than 10 hours. Mm-hmm. And what we had an issue with people calling code enforcement because they didn't like their neighbors parking there for a short period of time, and a lot of issues. And then the discussion turned to if you have a child visiting overnight from college and they park on the street, it's probably more than 10 hours. And we talked about what was the appropriate period to allow somebody to park on the street. It's a judgment call. There are pros and cons. Council came down with 24 hours. Beyond that, it's not reasonable to park on the street, but 24 hours seemed to be a reasonable time to allow somebody to park on the street. So there's no true right or wrong answer, but the council was trying to look at what was a balance between reasonableness and someone who was just there too long.
And so I understand that objective and appreciate too, as a citizen, the interest of council and the office of the mayor in solving that sort of problem. What I'm concerned about would be the unintended consequences. One of those will be spillover of commercial parking onto residential streets, particularly around Canton Street. If we look, for example, at what happens, and we talked, I think, at the last meeting about Alive After 5 as an example, or yesterday's criterion for Alive After 5 today, someone parks their car at 5 o'clock p.m. and maybe has some drinks, and they have to get the car out of there, though, by whatever that is, 3 a.m., I guess would be the math. But after the passage of this change, it would be the next day, the next afternoon. So like on Thompson Place, for example, we have this spillover. Yesterday it went down past Nancy Trail, both sides of the road, making it where you could only get one car through. And I'm concerned that this will result in an increase of that sort of activity for longer periods of time, particularly with Vickers Village being proposed, which would have 70 multifamily units on Canton Street. And I think too that if we were to take a conservative approach to legislating, I think that would suggest that we take the most narrowly tailored approach possible to solve the problem that's in front of us. There was some discussion about permits, but another option could be to say it's in front of your house. So if it's in front of your house, you could park for 24 hours. That would eliminate the problem of, for example, commercial spillover and other unintended consequences that might have to have us looking, at this problem again at a later date. So I'd ask the council to reject the motion as offered and reconsider this proposal because it's potentially going to result in other problems and impair issues for us off of Kent Street. Thank you.
Yes, come forward.
He doesn't know me very well. I'm Janet Russell. I think the 24-hour, I agree with this gentleman. I think it's too much. I live in a pretty hang-loose neighborhood. If somebody's got a family member visiting for a vacation for a week, we don't care. However, most of you know that Jones Drive empties into Highway 9, and at one corner we have where Amalfi Restaurant is, and Zenergize, and a new Zumba place, and on the other side is the coffee house. Jones Drive is not wide enough for two cars to pass each other. When you allow on-street parking at all, and I've contacted the police about this, there isn't really on-street parking on our Jones Drive. It is in-lane parking. They're actually in an ingress or egress lane because it's so narrow. And they park there, whether it's 2 hours or 6 hours. If they go on Friday and Saturday nights to Amalfi Restaurant, they park all the way up Jones and around the corner. An emergency vehicle cannot even get down Jones Drive. So we got them to put a sign, no parking on one side of Jones Drive. So now they just park on the other side of the street. And for us, it's not even a time limitation, although technically now you're telling them they could stay there 24 hours. And I think you need to eliminate the 24 hours. I agree with this gentleman. If neighbors can't work it out, that's their problem, but I do think you're creating a mess over there with that Vickers Village. But where I live, Jones Drive, we get spillover, not the church people. You know, there's an entire church parking lot down below. But on Wednesdays, the coffee house people are not allowed to use the church parking lot above. And the young people don't want to walk from the lower parking lot up to the coffee house because it's really far. So they just park on our curves, and it's a blind curve, and it's very dangerous. And when I ask them to move, they don't like it. And when I explain to them that an emergency vehicle like a fire truck couldn't get down there, they don't really care. When you start saying people can park anywhere for 24 hours, I think you're giving them license again to do anything they want, because that's how the mentality of the people are today. So I think you need to reject this proposal.
Does anyone else wish to comment? Yes, come forward, please.
Hello, everybody. Once again. Okay, here's the deal. My name is Magella Hardy. I live at Tyson's Corner. Yes, we have a maniac who calls all the time for code enforcement. And I've actually hit somebody who was behind my house, behind my driveway. I hit him. There were too many people parked on either side. There were two sets of cars on either side. I hit them. I have a van. So I've encountered this. Now, the person who has a problem with, everyone who has a problem with, you have two sets of cars parking on the either side of the street, you have two options. Number one, you don't have to, you can actually have half of them moved. The other option is the chief of police, sorry chief to bring me into this, he has an option to say where people can park and where they cannot park. He can make it a mandatory, where you cannot park there. That's part, that's part of what the state allows. Originally, the whole state has 5 days. Most of the places around us have 3 days. It's going to be the same problem for 10 hours versus 24 hours. There's no difference at this point. So, and I have one child who lives down the street from us, and they have so many stripes in front of their house, it looks like you should be playing hopscotch or something like that, where they've struck that child's tire so many times. That's fine, I don't care. But what I don't like is the fact that we have this maniac in our neighborhood who calls all the time. If you know how much money that has been expended on the part of the city by people coming out, by your police officers coming out to ride around, give warning tickets, then give tickets, the amount of time that you've spent on my little tiny community because of this person is unbelievable. Not only that, but she calls constantly to have, we're right up there against the Greenway, she calls constantly to have trees taken down. She has a whole host of problems. The only thing that you can do to help us,
that we now have more cars in families, well, does that mean that one of them is allowed to park on the street on a rotating basis?
Councilmember Price, I'm sure that the language can be changed. If you would like to propose an amendment You can propose an amendment. If you would like to come back with whether this ordinance passes or not, you can always propose a new ordinance. But tonight, we need to make a decision. So we need to either hear an amendment, or you can make a motion to defer, or you can oppose it, or you can vote for it. But to have a lengthy discussion of what is possible is not going to get to its decision point tonight. If you wish to ask this council to defer it further to consider different proposals, we'll entertain a motion for that. Or if you have something specific, we'll entertain a motion for that.
All right, if we don't approve a second reading tonight, what is the course of this?
Mr. Davidson, if the second reading is not approved tonight, if it is deferred, and that's, I assume, what your question is, how long can it be deferred?
You can defer it for 65 days from the first reading, and the first reading was April 13th, so you have plenty of time.
All right, I'd like to move to defer in order to add language that would prevent habitual parking on the street.
There is a motion to defer by Councilmember Price. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Eichelhart. Any further discussion of that motion? All in favor of the Councilmember DiPolito.
Question about the motion. The motion is just to look at additional language, or is it to look at specific language, or you broadening it to, or is it broad enough that we can look at other options?
In the motion to defer, you could look at any options you wished because you're not taking a vote. The effect of the motion to defer is not to defer it for a specific reason as much as she's made a motion to defer. Her reasons are to discuss additional things, but if you defer it, anything can be added or taken away.
Add for those reasons or any other.
Okay.
Would you second that?
Yeah.
It's already been seconded.
We're good.
I just wanted clarification on that.
So there is a motion to defer. The discussion of what the amendments could be to the ordinance is only limited by your imagination. I will tell you, though, if your council is going to say, let's pass an ordinance to prevent habitual violators from violating parking ordinances, and you are successful in that, you will have changed the law of human nature and have done something quite extraordinary. Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with you. I wanted to make a comment because when I first heard this, I thought it was reasonable as well. But then I started thinking about the fact that, you know, it has been in place for so many years, and with the exception of a few areas, it really hasn't been a problem. I think the areas adjacent to commercial property are a concern, particularly the Canton Street area. So I think that's a very valid concern. And frankly, I'd rather have people park in their driveway if they have an extra car and it's a little bit of a hassle and you need to move around and maneuver around your own cars, and you know, that's something we do in our household and we just make it work. So I'd rather not see cars on the street, would be my preference. I realize we have some areas that there are problems. I still think Councilmember Eichelhart's idea of if there's a special situation, if there's somebody who has to have multiple cars and they can't have them in the driveway for whatever reason, maybe there's an option there that we give them a special license to do that. So I'm leaning in that direction right now.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to defer, raise their hands. That's Price, Eichelhart, and DiPolito. All opposed? Diamond, Wynn, and Orleans. I'm going to vote to deny the deferral. So we're going to be voting on the motion. All in favor of the motion? Councilmember Orleans.
I'd like to amend the motion to 12 hours.
From 10 to 12.
Correct.
We have a motion to amend the 10-hour ordinance to a 12-hour ordinance. Is there a second?
Basically, go ahead.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion to make it 12 hours from 10 hours. Councilmember Wynn.
I'd like to know Councilmember Orland's reasoning to add just 2 more hours to that, please, before I decide how to vote.
Basically, this whole thing is getting so out of whack, it's unbelievable. We had an ordinance on the books for 59 years. that allowed up to 10 hours. It has nothing to do, this ordinance has nothing to do with commercial overflow or anything else. Those are other new issues on the whole deal. So all we were doing was considering whether the 10 hours was still appropriate timing because of certain situations in certain neighborhoods where people were making an issue to the police. So we were trying to come up with something to give in overnight parking. 10 hours maybe was a little bit limited depending on when you started from a technical standpoint. And so the idea came up with 3 days and 5 days, and we came to a compromise, trying to come to a compromise of 24 hours. So if somebody parks in the example, the commercial, they can park there now on the side streets off Canton Street. And if they leave it at 5 o'clock, the police haven't marked it at 5 o'clock. They won't know if it's been there for 10 hours at 3 in the morning. And I guess I'd rather have somebody leave the car and get a ride home and then come back the next day to get it. So I guess, you know, we don't want to get an extreme in that commercial areas to the 24 hours. So I guess I'm going right back to the idea that we should compromise it at 12 hours, give somebody basically overnight, and then they're going to have to move the car, or they can rotate it now under the 10 hours. They can rotate it 20 million times a day if they want to. So I don't see what rotation's going to do. So as I said, I think this whole thing is getting totally out of whack to move from 10 hours to an undetermined number of hours. So I'm proposing an amendment to adjust it a little bit from what we've had for 59 years and give somebody the overnight. So if you got a student or somebody there, and then if Councilman DiPolito wants to propose something in the future that is completely different about restricting the driveways, you know, I'm all for listening to it. But we have spent so much time on this when it was one little bit of a change and it had nothing to do with these other things, because all these other things can be done currently. So I'm proposing an amendment to go to 12 hours and move this thing on.
And I believe in that, to compromise and keep at least getting a majority vote. So if 12 hours we're not listening to the floor. If 12 hours makes it work, I'm for 12 hours. So we have a motion to amend the 10 hours to 12. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor.
There is a second.
I have already
All right,
seconded.
so we're voting on revising the current ordinance to go from 10 hours to 12. We're taking a vote. Any further discussion on that vote? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on Councilmember Orland's comment that I actually seconded your motion, so I actually agree with you.
Saying if you want to go the other direction, that'd be a whole
I
nother
don't want to go
discussion.
another direction. I agree.
Don't talk past the sale. We have a motion and a second for 12 hours. All in favor of the 12 hours, and this will be the second in the last reading. You can always come up with a new ordinance tomorrow. All in favor of 12 hours. There's a question by Councilmember Price.
Would be in effect a change of our current ordinance, correct?
Correct.
And that costs us how much to do when we go into
the cost?
The cost of changing an ordinance. No, when we.
Are you talking about?
When we put it into those whatever things that we have to put it into.
Kay, is there a cost associated with an additional cost other than current advertisements or whatever we spent? You're talking about going from 10 to 12. If we make this change tonight, is there any additional cost over the current cost of making this change?
Not counting the hours that have already been spent up to this time on
Staff time and council time.
Yes, sir, that would be a very large amount. However, we pay for a service to codify changes to not just this ordinance, but any ordinance or action that the mayor and council take. So there's no additional charge for that. We have to have it codified, we have to copy it.
So
it's
staff
minimal.
time of making the change.
Right.
So they're on a retainer, is that what you're saying?
Well, we pay for the service. They're not on retainer, it's just we pay for a service so if you change one ordinance or you change every ordinance in the city, there's
no incremental cost.
Well, there may be incremental for the level of service that we get, but it doesn't change based on the typical amount of ordinances that you change in a given year. How long you debate it or how many times you defer it and going back and forth to committee, that's not taken into that service. This is just what it takes to then, once you finally make a decision, to actually codify it.
Any other questions, discussion?
I didn't get an answer.
No, there is no additional
I don't-
cost.
I don't know the
I mean,
cost.
when we submit it to them, do we get a bill directly from that, or do we?
Well,
get-
we pay for, I can get you the information, Councilmember Price, I don't know it off the top of my head, unfortunately, but there's an amount we pay per year, it's not per
It's a fixed
change.
cost, it's not per ordinance, so any additional cost of where we pass this ordinance, it's not going to change that base charge. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second to revise the parking ordinance from 10 hours to 12. All in favor, raise their hands. That is Councilmember DePolito, Orleans, Price, and Eichelhart. All opposed? Wynn and Diamond, the mayor is voting in the majority. It's going from 10 to 12. Oh, I don't vote. That's right, it passed. It passed 4-2. I don't need to take a position. Passes 4-2. I strike my vote. My vote was out of order and stricken. All right, if we'll move on to even more exciting things.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember DePolito.
That was an amendment. Now we have to vote on the actual ordinance, do we not?
All right, we'll vote on the passage of the second reading of the ordinance changing and it'll change the time from 10 to 12. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. DePolito, Eichelhart, Price, and Orleans. All opposed? Wynn and Diamond passes 4-2. The next item on the agenda is Environmental Public Works Department Liaison, Councilmember Rich DePolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item is approval to use standby engineering design services firm Brown and Caldwell for the design of the Green Infrastructure Implementation and Best Management Practices Revolving Fund Project in an amount not to exceed $120,600. And Mr. Skelski will present this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm very excited about this project and look forward to getting it started. Very briefly, in February of this year, you all approved acceptance of a 319 grant under the Clean Water Act from EPA. That's a very competitive grant program. I believe there are only 5 awarded in the state this year. This project would be to kick off that project using one of our standby services engineers, Brown and Caldwell. There were a number of questions about the project that have been addressed in the attachment to the agenda item itself, related to the project budget breakdown and the details of the scope of work. We'd like to use a standby services firm because of their historical involvement with the grant program, with this project in particular, in helping us secure the grant. And we believe this will be the most expeditious and most economical way to proceed with the project, both on schedule and our opportunity to get the best fees, since our current standbys have had those same fees for 3 years. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to address those.
Just for clarification, what is the total cost of this project?
The total cost of the overall project is $361,046. That's the overall project. The cost
And this is
of
the engineering
the
portion.
engineering and analytical portion and outreach portion is $120,000.
And what is the city share of the overall project going to be?
50%.
Does the council have any other questions? Councilmember Price.
Yes, and in the committee meeting, it wasn't clear that there was a match, and the $180,000 match, is that something that's in the current budget or will be in a future budget? Or have we already appropriated that? What is the status of that $180,000?
The city's $180,000?
Yes, our match.
That would come out of our current funding through our stormwater utility fees budget, so it is currently funded as part of our capital improvement program.
So this is the first time we will have moved forward on that amount? Appropriating that amount?
Yes.
Okay. Because it wasn't clear at the committee that we had a match.
May I clarify?
So that sort of bothers me. And can you define a revolving fund?
I will try. I may defer to some of our financial folks here in the audience, but in short, that program is similar to a state-run program that allows us to leverage funding once it's established. So we will allow a program to begin. We'll fund it initially. When those applicants pay back into the fund, we'll be able to leverage that money and use it again for other similar projects elsewhere in the city. That's one of the attractive, innovative features of this program, is developing that specifically for stormwater infrastructure funding. We've already had inquiries about how that's going to work, literally from outside the state, because of the interest in this program.
Any other questions?
So again, that revolving fund is what, somebody else's, we're getting interest from somebody else, or somebody else getting interest from us? What? I don't get it.
In short, there are opportunities where shared infrastructure investments can be funded upfront, paid back potentially over time, and this is a potential refunding opportunity where the city would collect those revenues back and be able to leverage that capital again on another stormwater project outside of this particular study area. So it's a pilot program that'll, one, put in a stormwater management system in the Groveway area, and number two, create this revolving fund mechanism that we'll be able to use throughout the city in the future.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve. This is a green infrastructure project, which is something that the city is encouraging developers to use, and I think it's great that we are leading the charge by showing some innovative ways to build some green infrastructure. So with that, I move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DePolito to approve the grant. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Yeah, that's Councilmember Orleans, Eigelhart, Wynn, DePolito, and Diamond. All opposed. Councilmember Price passes 5-1.
The next item is approval of an amendment to the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances to repeal 24.6 Roswell Lakes and Ponds Partnership Policy and replace it with Article 24.6 Roswell Dredging Assistance Policy. This is the first reading. Mr. Galson.
Thank you again. In summary, this project, or this item, will totally replace the Lakes and Ponds Ordinance with a dredging assistance policy. There are a number of changes. In essence, we're trying to clarify the program objectives and clarify the application process and the constraints on the program. There are a number of particulars, but I believe legal counsel can weigh in on the specific language changes. There were a significant number of changes, and hence the complete replacement of the ordinance.
Yeah. Councilmember Orleans.
On the current ordinance, there is a requirement for inlet and outlet controls, and I didn't see that in the new ordinance. Is that something we feel we don't need anymore, or is that just missed in the translation?
I believe that we specifically do not think that inlet-outlet controls are a key focus of the ordinance in terms of the types of project expenditures that the city is most concerned about at this point. Because it's primarily a dredging.
Right, but in the original, I know we wanted to require those inlet and outlet controls, not so that it was easier for dealing with the issues after the fact, after we already dredged it out. So I think that needs to be looked at before the second reading to make sure and be clear on that, if you could.
No.
Mr. Davidson wished to make a comment on that.
Yeah, if you go to section G, number 5, it says the city shall have the right to require upstream or downstream measures to minimize incoming sediment and the potential for channel erosion downstream. That's the city can require those. instead of somebody just doing them and then having us try to pay for them. So we can require it as part of the process under this.
Under the old one.
Councilmember Eichelberg.
Where's the number of the new one?
That's a new one he's talking
On
about.
E1, which talks about the amount and number of projects, is multiple dredging projects for a specific lake or lakes will not be approved. Does that mean ever, or is it, so if something goes back 5 years from now, they're not eligible ever again, or dredging is needed over a length of time? Again, generally, can you clarify that? What that means?
That'll be up to the council at the time, but I think the intent was that in one application, there would only be the ability to apply for one lake, which would be one project.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Davis, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 24, Utilities and Services, Article 24.6, Adoption of the Roswell Lakes and Ponds Partnership Policy of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell. Now therefore, the Mayor and Council, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Chapter 24, Administration, Article 24.6, Adoption of Roswell Lakes and Ponds Partnership Policy of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Georgia, is hereby amended by deleting therefrom Article 24.6, Adoption of the Roswell Lakes and Ponds Partnership Policy in its entirety, and substituting a new Article 24.6 Roswell Dredging Assistance Policy, therefore, to read as follows, the text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this be the first reading.
Do we have a motion to approve the first reading?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. At this time, we'll hear from anyone in the audience who wishes to comment. If you'll come forward and give us your name and address, we'd like to hear from you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lisa DeCarbo. I live at 130 South Shore Court, Roswell, Georgia, 30076. I want to thank you for hearing me tonight, and I also want to thank Councilmember Orleans and Eichelberg for bringing up a couple of the points that I was going to address. One of the things I'd like to clarify is whether this new ordinance will apply to only future applications.
So is the question, does it apply to current applications?
Correct.
Mr. Davidson, could you respond?
Well, under the current ordinance as it applies, the only monies that are available are the monies that are budgeted. So that program will be no longer in existence if this is approved. So whatever monies are there could be still used, and then this would be going forward would be a new program.
So the only award that would be made under the current ordinance would be what's in the budget right now, not a penny more.
It would be a different budget item then, yes.
And it would then come under a new ordinance, even though the applications had been made.
The applications
Under the current.
The applications would be under the old ordinance, which is only funded up to whatever dollar amount was budgeted, so.
So just a clarification, what's currently budgeted under the current ordinance? Ms. Love.
There's $200,000 currently available for appropriation.
So my understanding of Mr. Davidson's comment is under current applications could qualify for the 200, but they couldn't qualify under the new ordinance.
Unless mayor and council decide otherwise.
Ultimately, mayor and council can spend the taxpayers' money, correct? Have we answered your question?
That question, yes. Also, I have to agree with Councilman Orleans that it seems like if the idea is to partner with private entities to maintain a good stormwater management system, inlet and outlet controls are an essential part of that. The dredging only deals with the storage capacity, and that is not dealing fully with stormwater quality or quantity. The other question I have is, under this new ordinance, would stormwater utility fees be available to fund the program?
Mr. Davidson?
No.
Well, I guess, let me ask another question. Are they currently available to fund the current ordinance?
No.
So the availability of stormwater funds is not being affected positively or negatively by this change.
So stormwater utility fees, which are collected to maintain the stormwater management system of the city, can only be used currently and under this new proposed ordinance to fund publicly owned portions of that system, not to address the problems in the entire system.
Who is best suited to answer that question?
Can't remember exactly what it says off the top of my head, but I know I've looked at it and had a discussion with Councilman DiPolito regarding that, and they cannot be used currently for that purpose. I can't remember the exact wording.
I think the best answer is the stormwater is not currently available to be used for the Lakes and Ponds program. The limitations, I don't think we have an answer. Mr. Davis didn't answer your question of what can they be used for. Is someone else available who could give us that answer tonight?
You got left in the hot seat.
It's defined by the extent and level of service, I know, but
I would have to do some due diligence just to confirm that I'm
the
clear
full extent of what they could be used for.
Of what the flexibility is on the use of the stormwater utility fees. I apologize. I'd have to research that and get back to you.
And just to clarify too, the intent is to do one dredging per lake or pond that qualifies. I know there are size requirements, drainage area requirements, and all that. But there's no consideration to somebody, say, who did their lake. There are people that have done dredging 5-10 years ago. We continue to allow construction upstream from these lakes and ponds. There's no consideration for the fact that this is an ongoing problem and an ongoing diminishment of the storage capacity. Even if you're limiting to only addressing that portion of the stormwater management, which is the storage capacity of these lakes and ponds, it really looks like you're not going to address that on an ongoing basis. So the system will just be allowed to deteriorate.
Well, I cannot agree to all of your conclusions, but you are correct in stating that it's my understanding that the current and proposed ordinance was only for one project and not for repeating the project later in its lifespan.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify one point that was made, that the current application would be addressed under the current ordinance, but if for some reason that didn't get resolved, that applicant could then reapply under the new ordinance and qualify under the new ordinance. Correct, Mr. Davis?
The plans under the new ordinance have to be approved before they proceed with any work. So if they've already done the work, that would not be allowed under the new ordinance.
But that's part of the existing ordinance.
Correct.
So
you could amend the ordinance to say that you could
yes.
consider, you could grandfather situations in if you wish to amend the ordinance to say that. Is that fair to say, Mr. Davidson?
Absolutely.
But currently, we don't grandfather existing applications in.
Right, but if there is an application that is in and they hadn't started the work, they could then, and the ordinance changes, they could apply under the new ordinance. So, okay, so there's no, just because you've applied under the existing ordinance doesn't mean you can't apply under the
That's
new
correct.
ordinance.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. My second question is for Mr. Scalzi, and I know you won't have an answer for me tonight, but is there a reasonable period of time, 5 years, 10 years, to allow somebody to reapply for this? Because I think Mr. Carbo's point is well taken, that some ponds, lakes and ponds, are impacted more than others. And there is new construction going on, so there's always stream erosion. So at some point, it's worthwhile doing that again. So I think we need to look at some sort of a mechanism where there is an opportunity to apply again down the road. I don't know what that time, is that a time frame, or is that a volume type of thing.
I think that's a reasonable point and suggestion. And quite frankly, I thought when I initially looked through this that Mayor and Council and we may have been concerned about the prospect of splitting projects, which sometimes happens, or multiple repetitive applications, which I think we were trying to avoid with this language. But I think this is an ongoing issue that does have to be done periodically for maintenance. My first reaction would be something like a minimum of 5-year time frame is probably reasonable. Typically a 10-year time frame for some of these facilities is about normal from the ones that I think we've dealt with thus far in my experience.
If we can look into that historically and come up with a recommendation, I'd appreciate that.
We'll do that.
Any other questions for staff? Anyone else in the audience wish to comment? Yes. Councilman Orleans. I'm afraid to.
Yeah, just a couple comments. Again, looking at this for second reading, and I would kind of agree, you know, even if we put in a 10-year time period, that, you know, if there's a valuable part of our system that, you know, additional development can come into play and we need to do this a second time, that at least there would be some consideration for it. And then secondly, I wasn't necessarily referring to the fact that we would pay for inlet or outlet controls, but I think requiring them to be in place for our benefit or for the benefit of the water system may be another point to consider for the second reading. So, thank you.
Councilmember Price.
Can someone clarify for me what changes in this ordinance affect the current application?
I'm not sure that I can do that for you on the spot. And when you say the current application, I believe we have a couple. One historical, I believe we've had one interested party approach the city within the last several months. So I'm a little unclear on the question there.
Well, I'm sure the representative of the applicant could provide that information, if not tonight, at some point between now and the second reading. What in the second reading, I mean, what in the proposed ordinance would affect them adversely? Just like to know that.
I didn't follow that last question. Do you understand it?
It sounded to me like a question for the applicant, and to try to clarify what in the proposed ordinance would affect them adversely. So I think that's what I understood, and we can certainly follow up to try to understand that.
Well, I mean, I guess my sense is that this ordinance is being proposed in response to the applicant. Is that fair to say?
It is fair to say that when this ordinance was passed, that we had the expectation it was going to be for only one lake and one project, not for multiple projects on the same lake. We're trying to clear that up. When this ordinance was passed, I understood that this wasn't going to be money to fix dams. And now the question about the outlet control had to come in. Is it about fixing dams? When this ordinance was passed, it was my understanding that we were going to fix the lake once, but we were going to expect the property owner to then be responsible for fixing the lake, dredging the lake the second time. That may change now with this consideration of this council. So if you're saying what was the expectation originally and what was the intent, I can tell you what I understood the intent was. And I hope to have made that clear to you.
Okay, and has the current applicant availed themselves of this fund previously?
No. The current status is, okay, if you'll, there was money is appropriated and approved for this project in the amount of how many dollars?
I believe that there was $100,000 earmarked for said application, and then.
We're talking about the Mount Martin's Landings project. There was they submitted an application and were approved for $100,000, have since done some additional work, and after the work was done, have made additional application.
Right, and council approved I believe it was that mid-year budget amendment to allocate, or it could have been during the regular process, I'll have to check, Mr. Mayor. Anyway, $100,000 additional dollars was appropriated to the Lakes and Ponds program, not allocated or against any particular application that would be there for the council to appropriate as they deemed appropriate.
So does that answer your question?
Yes, and and I remember making that motion, so I know there's 200,000 in there. So once this ordinance changes, what happens to that 200,000?
Well, the staff is going to have to give me the technical answer. It's my understanding that the 200,000 would be available for projects that were applied for prior to this adoption of this new ordinance. Okay, if you'll let.
The money is sitting in a capital project, so if the Lakes and Ponds program were to be defunct, then that money would be available to reprogram to any project that the council deemed appropriate, which could be a new dredging program, it could be another capital project.
It can be reallocated, but right now there's 200,000 which is available to disperse under the existing current Lakes and Ponds program.
Correct, with a caveat, 100,000 of the 200 has been earmarked for Martin's Landing previously. So there was $100,000 made available to them for their project. It has not been dispersed pending the applications coming in being processed, which has been quite a while back.
I think it wasn't dispersed because of Martin's Landing's request for additional funding.
Correct.
Councilmember Price.
So would there be an expiration of those monies? Would it be the end of this fiscal year, or?
No.
It would not, so it doesn't roll back into anything. Okay, so it's
not automatically. This council could roll it back, but right now there's 200,000 available, and it's subject to current ordinance.
It will be there in August if it's not dispersed?
The answer is yes.
Thank you.
Other questions? Did we get a motion?
Yes.
We have a motion to approve the first reading. And a second. And is anyone else, last chance to comments from the floor? This is not the last reading. There will be additional chance to be heard if this passes. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is unanimous. When will this be coming back for a second reading? May 11th. Does Councilmember DePolito, do you anticipate this coming to a committee for discussion before then? I know we have some interested parties in the audience.
Since the 11th is a zoning meeting, do we want to push it 2 weeks? No?
No, we probably would want to push it past May 11th because we already have a really heavy agenda. I just said the next available council.
So May 25th?
That would be better, yes, sir.
It would be the 27th, because 25th is.
Right, 27th would be that Wednesday because of Memorial Day.
Okay.
So it'd be coming back on the 27th if it's passed.
May 27th.
It has passed. Do you anticipate this coming to committee before it comes back to council?
I was not anticipating that. We had some minor comments that I think we can address.
All right, so right now it's not scheduled for committee.
No.
Thank you. It's next item, please. That's public safety. Liaison Councilmember Jerry Orleans.
Next item is approval for the mayor and the city council to sign a contract with Piper O'Brien Air Architects for the design of Fire Station 4 in the amount of $424,035. And this will be presented by a team.
Takes two. Good evening, Mayor and Council. How are you doing? What we have before you tonight is a contract with Piper O'Brien Hurd to do the design work for Fire Station 4. This includes the civil and architectural, as well as assist with the construction process, the art placement on the site, as well as the coordination of the construction during the process. There is no FF&E work in this particular proposal, and the architectural fee is $372,500, and the civil engineering is $51,535. That would be performed by ACE.
Does the council have any questions? Council?
I was just going to make a motion for
Do we
the,
have a motion?
make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the contract for $44,000. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Nguyen. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion? Councilmember Diamond.
So when we get done with this, we will have plans that we can go to construction.
Yes, ma'am. What the next phase we will do is actually hire a construction manager at risk, and they will assist in the design work to make sure that we do not over-design the project so that it comes in over budget. And they will provide us a maximum guaranteed price during the process so that we can be in construction.
Thank you.
Yes,
Councilmember Napolito.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, so I want to make sure that we have our design costs completely covered, our construction management costs completely covered, and that they're right. We include signage and
bathrooms,
you know,
landscaping,
the
lights,
what is it, the
lights,
pole from the second floor that you need in a firehouse?
Slide.
The slide, we're doing a slide, not a pole in this particular one. Yes, sir, you're absolutely.
So the construction management cost is included within this dollar amount you gave us?
It will be within the $3.88 million that we have for both the art and the fire station.
So that's above the 424.
Yeah, yes,
So it's
absolutely.
not included in what we're approving tonight.
That's correct. The CM at risk, or the individual doing the construction, is not in this amount. No, sir.
So that'll be a separate amount you'll be bringing to us later?
Yes, sir.
But it will fit within our budget?
Yes, sir, it will fit within our
And
budget.
if our architects don't design this project to budget, what happens then?
Based on
Public hanging.
based on the way that we have asked the architect to draft their proposal. We will actually price this building 4 times during the design process to make sure we aren't designing over budget, so that we will know along the way that what we plan to put on the ground fits within the budget.
Okay. All right, good. Well, we want to design properly. We want to design well. It needs to meet all the needs of our fire safety folks. So we want to make sure it's done right, but we also want to bring it in on budget.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Public safety will not go over budget, correct, Deputy?
That's exactly right.
And
We're
Keith?
good.
And Keith, right?
Correct,
Public
yes, sir.
safety will not go over budget on this.
Public safety will not go over budget.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Councilmember Price, liaison to the Public Recreation Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our next item is approval of BA 3506101-04-27-2015 for funding items for the Adult Recreation Center Therapeutic Pool Project in the amount of $217,500, presented by Morgan Rogers, our relatively new Director of Recreation Parks.
Thank you, Dr. Price. The requested amendment provides for $217,500 additional funding for the therapeutic pool currently under construction at Grimes Bridge Park. These items were not included in the contract that the mayor and council approved in October of 2014, but are needed to operate the pool efficiently and safely. I'll give you a brief synopsis of the items that we are requesting tonight. for funding. The relocation of the tennis courts due to the construction. The tennis courts, where the tennis courts are, because of the way the site was, we had to come in, use that area as access, and that's going to be access for both the maintenance and deliveries. And so the tennis courts need to be relocated. That was not included in the contract, original contract, and that's $100,000 to relocate tennis courts, and the neighbors in that area desperately want the tennis courts. The second item is the paving of the parking lot adjacent to the pool, which is where the tennis courts used to be. Currently, there's a gravel parking lot in the contract. We would like for that to be asphalt, and that's a $40,000 addition. We need cabling in the facility. That's for our computers, our phone lines, and our copiers and those kind of things. There are currently no cabling in the contract. That's $28,000. The security for the facility, we need to be able to secure it and to keep our participants safe. This will provide for cameras for the security, as well as to be able to monitor our participants. Our participants are, a lot of them are over the age of 50, and we're concerned about their safety. We want to keep an eye on them. That's $16,000. We also need furniture, fixtures, and equipment for this particular building. That's desks, chairs, lane ropes, lockers, etc. That's $11,000. And then we need wayfinding signs in keeping with our existing park signage, and that's $2,500. So that's a grand total of $217,500. The funding for this amendment, if approved, would come from the Capital Projects Fund.
Does the council have any questions for Morgan Rogers? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, following up on my grilling of the last item, I support all these improvements. I am not comfortable with approving the tennis courts outside of the budget, and since the budget is months away, I'd like for us to take that into consideration with the budget. So I would support funding the balance of the items this evening, but I'd like to see that $100,000 moved off as part of the budgeting process.
So your budget, you're approving $117,500 is your motion?
I'm not making a motion, but for whoever is. I'm saying
I forgot. I apologize.
My preference.
That's your preference.
My preference is to take the tennis court relocation out, which would drop it down to $97,500 for this evening. And then let's just include the $100,000 as part of our capital.
If you wish, you can amend, make a motion to amend and see if you get a second on that. All right, Councilmember Diamond.
Mr. Rogers, other than a personal objection to people over 50 needing a solid parking space to walk on, I do have one other question. What if we delayed the if we didn't delay the tennis courts, when might they be ready to use? If we approved it now?
If they're approved tonight, then it would be part of the construction. It would be ready at least by November. I don't know the exact schedule of the tennis courts, but the whole project is scheduled to be completed in November. So the tennis courts would be done before that, but I'd have to look at the schedule, which I don't have with me tonight, to give you an exact timing on that. I mean, this part of it be in the, I could give it to you, I could find it tomorrow and get it to you.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to know how long it takes, because ideally, if we're going to do it, I'd like them to be available for the spring. So, I'd rather not be in construction in April.
Let me ask you a question, to going back to Councilmember DiPolito's request. If this council did not approve the tennis courts tonight, but made the decision to approve or not approve the tennis courts in May, would this delay substantially or cause, if you waited until the end of May to approve the tennis courts, could they be done at the same cost if they were approved tonight in roughly the same time span?
Without consulting with the contractor, I couldn't answer that question, Mr. Mayor.
When is work going to begin on the tennis courts?
I do not know that. Sorry.
All right, thank you. Other questions? Do we have a motion?
We already had it.
We have a motion and a second to approve.
No, we haven't had a motion yet. I'm about to make one. Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to reiterate, there's slightly different wording on this one that there was in committee, which doesn't clearly specify the $20,000 for landscaping that is part of the $217,500. So I'd like to make a motion to include the tennis court, include the parking lot, include the cabling, include the security, include furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and signage and landscaping. Unfortunately, these were in the original plan, but somehow or other inadvertently got left out in the rebidding. So to reinstate all these items in the amount of 217,500 in a budget amendment, that's my motion.
A motion to approve $217,500 budget amendment by Councilmember Price. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Orleans. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any amendments or further discussion by council? Councilmember DiPolito.
Well, since I have already declared my intent, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to take out the tennis courts for the time being, put them in the proposed budget for 2016.
Motion to amend to take out the tennis court by Councilmember DiPolito. Is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Any further discussion about the main motion? All in favor of the motion to approve 217.5? That is unanimous. Do we have a motion to for closure, discuss real personnel litigation, real estate? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Diamond. All in favor, raise their hands. Approved. We're adjourned.
Going to 220.
We're meeting in room 220 for closure meeting. So what was the joke?
You're afraid to ask.
You're supposed to. I'm offended that you didn't. I'm thankful.